Welcome to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Becker's off the bounce, pulls up in the lane for two. And in a late clock, Beth, you let anybody but Paige Beckers catch it. 28 for Beckers. She's at her NCAA tournament average. 3 early season losses for the Huskies, who are proving that it's not how you start, it's how you finish. And UConn knocks out a number 1 seed to head back to the Final Four.
Here's Martin. Clark, again coming off the screens. Clark steps back, fires. You bet! Her 7-3 of the game. That will do it. This time, it's Iowa. The Hawkeyes are headed back to the Final Four. Galactic greatness from Caitlin Clark on display yet again.
You know, at the end of the day, you win, you lose. I feel like our group has given so much to this game and to this program that you can always hold your head high. But I think at the same time, that's the reason we have been able to play such good basketball is we don't want this to end and we want to keep coming back.
Good morning. Welcome into Hurrdat Sports Radio here on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here on the Pillar Exterior stage. DB, what's going on?
What up? Just trying to make it, clear my throat. A lot of basketball. Well, it's a pretty good night for sports in general.
Yeah.
I didn't feel great. So like the kitchen and eating like wasn't a thing. So I kind of just
camped out a little bit.
Yeah. It's kind of the essence of it, man. And saw no and some blown leads in baseball, which at some point we'll get to our predictions, our Cy Youngers.
Maybe by like All-Star break.
Baseball this week. And I mean, the Stars were out.
Oh yeah.
Which was, I mean, we saw it a little bit with Connect and Edie.
Mm-hmm.
But more times than not, when the women get to this point, like the good players are really, really good players.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
Some may argue it's a little too top heavy in women's college basketball, but that was good. And
although not nearly as much as it used to be.
No.
It used to be like maybe 1 or 2 teams.
Okay, so we're gone to like 4 or 5.
I mean, we're getting a little better.
Yeah.
We're getting a little better. I mean, it takes some time. But I mean, there used to be you used to be able to just pick all 4 1 seeds and be like, hey, I'm gonna
some thoroughbreds too in the transfer portal and on both sides in college basketball, which is interesting. Man, NIL
it's wild.
It's a real thing.
Well, here's the other problem with NIL. And listen, I'm pro athletes making money, right? For a lot of these people,
just to speak to the balance that the shift towards balance that we're talking about.
For a lot of these people, it is their peak earning potential of their lives, and I am pro taking advantage of that. Right? Like,
yeah.
You know, for me, it's probably going to be like my 30s and 40s. For if you're a high level college athlete, you don't know what happens in the pros, and for some of these people, women's basketball included, your college career is more lucrative than your pro career, no matter how good you are, right?
And the getting's good.
Right. Yeah. So like take advantage of that. I'm 100% on board for that. But there needs to be some sort of we need to figure out a structure here for the NIL stuff, because I don't care that, like this person's leaving and so maybe my team's not as good or whatever. What I care about is people are telling these athletes things to get them into the transfer portal and then not delivering on those things.
Yeah. Tampering is definitely a thing.
We saw it last year with Ryan Nembhard. He was told things by Arizona. I have this under reasonably good authority. Don't take it as gospel, but he was told things by Arizona about what he could get there. He hopped in the transfer portal. He finds out, I can't actually get that at Arizona. And then he's kind of left out in the wind, because by that time, Creighton had signed Stephen Ashworth. I have it again on reasonably good authority that Ryan Nembhard asked if he could come back, and they didn't have a spot for him anymore.
Yeah, pretty late.
Because they had to move on.
Mm-hmm.
And then he ends up, luckily, he finds a place at Gonzaga. He has a nice year in a low major conference. I like to remind people that's fine, but just like consider that when you're looking at his stats. And it ended up okay for him. But I guarantee you, if he hadn't been told what he was told, he's playing for Creighton this year, because that's all it was about. And that's a dangerous thing. Like, not everybody finds a Gonzaga, right? Not everybody has the soft landing spot when they're told something to get them into the portal, and all of a sudden they're left holding the bag. That's what we need to figure out a structure for to prevent. And, you know, maybe that helps the schools out at some point too. That's great, but that's not what I'm concerned about. The schools can figure it out.
Yeah. It's a heck of a night. And it's, but to that point about what's going on, it's just interesting how some of these guys and gals, I mean, you catch wind that they're going to be in the portal in like January or February.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You get landing spots relatively quick. Some maybe take a visit or two. So, I mean, you obviously know that
there's been some back channeling.
There's been a lot going on, but I just think that's going to be hard to circumvent. I mean, that just may be kind of the way that it is, but we'll see. I mean, it's not Major League Baseball by any stretch, but man, can you turn it around in a hurry?
Oh,
right?
Major League Baseball.
The NFL is turn it around in a hurry. With the draft and free agency, and it's starting to happen in college sports. You see it a lot in college baseball. I mean, the shift can basically happen overnight.
Which college baseball has kind of been a Wild West for a while.
It has because it's flown under the attention radar.
Yeah, because there wasn't there was free transfers in college baseball way before.
Yeah, you could kind of just get to where you were going.
Yeah, there were anywhere else. And so there was a lot of that going on in college baseball, but because it's a little below the line in terms of attention in the sports world, people didn't really pay attention to it. And so you had guys moving all over the place. And listen, college baseball has been fine. Like, they figured it out. Guys figured out the balance of, okay, I can go here, I can't go here, whatever. And college baseball is arguably in a bigger mess than the rest of these sports because of the scholarship issues, right? You're about a dozen scholarships shy on what you need to be in college baseball.
For sure.
Because
minimum 7 or 8.
Yeah. Because what is it, 13?
Yeah. And a fraction.
And it's like 13.7 or 6 or something stupid.
At minimum.
And so
7, 8.
Yeah, your bare minimum, you got to get that thing to 20, because most of these college rosters carry 40 guys.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And so you can't even give a half scholarship to your whole roster currently, which is wild.
So, and we've seen some teams emerge, especially out of some, few out of non-power conferences and a few in power conferences like Wake Forest and some teams like that, and they're good again this year. But in women's basketball and in men's basketball, I mean, just look at a Morris League. I mean, there's a ton. We added one local with Josiah Dotzler, which we could get to in a little bit. But I mean, it's hard not to read the tea leaves in that one. But
on Dotzler,
yeah.
Well, you want to do that now?
No, I like to talk women's hoops first. We'll get to the portal.
Let's get to Michigan Lance. He wants to talk women's hoops as well, and then we'll give our thoughts on what we saw last night. Lance, what's going on, man?
Hey, good morning, boys. How y'all doing?
Michigan Lance.
What's
How
up,
we
buddy?
doing?
Man, I got a couple things. You guys, well, first off, Ravi.
You got a women's basketball family, man. You guys got to be loving this.
Hey, man. Yeah, I didn't like that white-on-white crime that was committed last night. They need to they need to arrest Mulkey for that. I mean, she's gonna live. She's gonna let
you talking about the
get murdered.
You're talking about the defensive match. Yeah, that got to be pretty puzzling after a while.
I have a theory, but I don't know. Like, it's the only. I wonder if she was like going galaxy brain and was like, hey, since Van Lith is sick and can't guard anybody else, Caitlin Clark's going to get hers anyway.
She couldn't throw it in the ocean either. She needed to go sit her behind down.
It's still wrong, but that's the only thing I can think of.
Well,
hey,
why would
that's been all year.
Why would you just defend the ball? Just give a different look. You showed some
Well, that's
flashes
it.
late where they did the like super hard hit.
Yeah.
She got pushed out away from the
It's
hoop.
what I get mad about with Creighton when
Yep.
they let guys make 18 mid-range jumpers in a row. I was like, hey, I get that's the shot you want them to take, but they're making it today, bro.
Yeah.
But Ravi, Creighton doesn't foul. They play great defense, right?
They don't foul. I mean, I don't know if they don't always play great defense, but they don't foul.
Wow, he had sneaked that in.
Oh, hey, but Ravi, you're just not a fan of when people leave places that you like, huh?
I can deal with listen, I'm okay with it.
The shot you've been throwing at Trev and then this Nemhard kid or whatever.
I mean, Nemhard's a different deal.
Yeah, that one's personal.
That one's a little different.
Okay, I see, man, because you threw that in there. You let him have it.
Well, I mean, listen,
Gonzaga in that conference.
Everybody.
Well, I mean, listen, you can't come to me when you're playing Loyola Marymount and be like, hey, he had 10 assists and 2 turnovers. It's like, that's great. He's not playing UConn tonight.
Hey,
go look at the Ken Palms of his conference outside of St. Mary's.
Being a fan is so personal.
It is.
Because if that didn't happen, hey, let's say 2 years ago, you're like, man, Gonzaga's a great program. Hey, but now since they took somebody you like, man, they're playing bums.
No, listen, Gonzaga's still a great program. They've always played bums. Like, they do a great job in the non-con.
That's not true.
No, they do a great job in the non-con because they have to, right? But their conference, they only ever what happened there? They only ever have
that's you beating the table.
One other good team in that conference. Ever.
Hey, DB, I threw that live for you because I know you're going to defend it.
Well, it's just not true. It's not true.
You can be a good program in a bad conference. Like, that's a real thing.
It's not true.
Hold on, before you guys go there, because I know DB's going to go in.
I'm not. I'm just gonna. Some things that doesn't even deserve. Like, that's fine. I mean, you can not like the conference, but they schedule their ass off.
That's what I just said.
Okay, so stop giving the caveat. They can't pick who's in their conference, right? St. Mary's and some of those teams that have given them fits the last couple of years are trying. Like,
St. Mary's is a good program.
They're not going to jump conferences, so it's a non-starter. And you know what you never talk about with Gonzaga? Their goddamn strength of schedule. So you're just picking at scabs that it's not even worth it. Nobody ever talks about Gonzaga's strength of schedule.
You want me to go through their schedule?
Nobody ever talks about Gonzaga's strength of schedule. They don't. It doesn't come up.
I'm talking about production against Q3 and Q4 teams. That's what I'm talking about.
That's fine, but it doesn't come up naturally in conversations when they're seated in tournaments typically.
All right.
I mean, they're pretty good.
Women's basketball. It's on the
10
rise.
straight
It's been
Sweet
on the
16s.
rise. It's
a great program.
It's
Bad
great.
conference.
Hey, DB, baseball.
Yes, sir.
Hey,
big one tonight in the city. Is that what you're talking about? Yes. Go Jays, go Huskers. Let's go. No, I'm kidding. What's up?
Hey, when you were playing, it's funny because you played positions that were bigger than you know what I mean? It was usually typically bigger or taller people at the positions you played, quarterback and center field?
Yes, I was relatively small.
Right. So did somebody ever tell you? Now I know Northwest moved you to running back, which was good because that was more natural of, height natural. But
sounds good. Now.
Right. But what about baseball? Well, I know it didn't for you then.
I didn't want to move in baseball either.
Right. And so did they try to get you to?
Yeah, and they did. They did.
Okay. All right. I always wanted. Go ahead.
I wanted to play early. I wasn't going to beat out Rob Egan at shortstop at the time as a 14-year-old kid. So it's like, when Coach Olson was like, "Hey, we'd like to move you to the outfield." I mean, some of that had to do with I was probably kicking it around every 7 balls, but I'm kind of.
So then, what about later in the career though? What about junior, senior year?
I was really, really comfortable in the outfield. Like I could play. I mean, for me, I know at the risk of making other baseball players mad that have never been in the outfield, I could play after moving from shortstop, I could play the outfield in my sleep. It's significantly easier to go back on a fly ball than it is for me to go in the hole to my right. You know what I mean?
But see, and that's where coaching comes in of saying, hey, and this is where I always believe your dad made a great decision for you. And I'm not opposed to parents making decisions for 18-year-olds because it worked out well for you. It's like, did you get drafted as a center fielder?
Yes,
is that
outfielder,
where?
yes.
Yeah. All right. Have a good day. Love you.
Okay, love you. Bye.
Yeah, you guys get to hear it again. So, see, this is why I'm so. See, people think just let an 18-year-old, and we get on 18, 19-year-olds, and like, but when a coach or somebody or a dad or somebody, a mom is guiding you to say, hey, if you go down this path, this will be better for you if you go down the other path. And sometimes you need to be a dictator as a parent or a coach for the greater good, because a young adult isn't going to make sound decisions. Majority of the time. They're going to make some good, but not the majority of, you know what I mean? And so you brought up baseball, and I wondered that with you because I knew you wanted to.
Well, my dad was a coach and an AD first, so he's gonna and he's gonna say, okay, well, what does Coach Hanel think, and what does Coach Olson think, right? So he's probably gonna side with those guys just because of their track record and the respect that he has
and
for
his
the
track
position.
record,
yeah.
And his track, and that's the other thing, yeah. And here's the other. Now this is personal. Now you get to. Hey, man, you don't fight fair. You don't fight fair at all.
Who, me?
Because, you. Because when we're on the radio, you're going in on me and let me have some things. And then I'm like, oh, okay, hold on. He said something that I need to talk to him about personally. And then
I don't even know what you're talking about.
No. I know. So when I do it, when I say something and you're like, that's wrong, and you call me and let me have it, hey, I take my medicine. But now when it's my turn to give it to you, you never answer the phone.
What did I do?
Now that's not fighting fair. Hey, man, so when we were talking about the Bo Jackson thing, right? And barbershop talk, and you're like, hey, I'm consistent. And I wrote in the chat, the reason your thought process is that way, of more analytical of coaching the majority of the time, well, all of the time, is because your dad was a coach in AD, like you said. So you're coming from a different perspective. So that doesn't mean that, and sometimes you think that's always right. And then the listeners think, well, that's got to be right because it's Damon Benny. But just because what I'm saying isn't always coach speak, doesn't mean that I'm not right. Because I can give it to you both sides. Okay. I can give it to you fanatically, and I can give it to you coach speak. That's why, but I'm still consistent on the base of, if you're supposed to be a dog and they say you're this and they say you're that, hey, you're a D1 and you're 7 foot and you're da-da-da-da, and out of Omaha, Nebraska, well, I should be seeing 20 and 10 every night in Omaha, Nebraska, because I've seen people like Kevin Mungin do it, TJ Pugh do it, or Donnie Johnson. Don't discredit me and my intelligence because it isn't always coach speak.
You been sitting on that?
Yeah, I've been sitting on it. You got the text message.
Oh yeah,
I told you we need to talk.
Yeah.
And hey, see, Ravi, that's what I don't like.
No,
I don't
because but Lance, I still don't agree. But I do want to get to the Caitlin Clark. I do want to get to the Caitlin.
You don't have to agree.
Yeah,
but I just want people to don't think that I'm. You know what I'm saying? Don't insult my intelligence. I'm not saying you are. But people will take it that way.
Oh, okay.
You have a certain presence that you sometimes forget you think you don't have.
Lance,
that's all I'm saying.
If it makes you feel any better, he doesn't answer my phone calls either. So
that's so.
Well, I know that. That's DB. That's DB. I know that.
So not true.
See, the worst friend go ahead.
This dude,
Caitlin Clark.
Yeah, go ahead. You were going.
Caitlin Clark and the miracles, man. It's all about those miracles, man. She's doing her best impression of old Danny Boy, from Kansas. And you know what? And listen, I haven't watched enough Iowa games this year. I watched a couple. I watched others more, South Carolina, USC, and South Carolina, USC, and the other. I watched Stanford, UCLA, and Notre Dame. I watched them more this year than I did Iowa. And so I didn't know for sure what they had, but because they're pumping her all the time. And so, hey, man, I don't know if those ladies stepped up or if that's what it's been all year. But, hey, I give them credit for for stepping up in a moment and saying, hey, we're going to win this thing. We're going to the Final Four. Caitlin's not doing it by herself. You know, we're going to help out. And which you saw with Juju, those people didn't. Oh man, hey, Juju. And
I don't even like watching her play.
I mean, she's nice to watch. Them other players now, I don't know about them.
She shoots too much.
Does she? I mean, so what? Doesn't Caitlin Clark and Paige? They all shoot. They're all shooters.
Doesn't matter. Caitlin Clark is average. I get the 10 assists and sometimes the shot selection, but Juju, the tough mid-range shot. So I watch her a lot, so I'm a little particular. But she reminds me of, like, this is a terrible example except for the city, of early Kobe, right? She shoots so many difficult contested 2-point shots. There's just ways to be way more efficient. The reason I don't throw Caitlin Clark into that equation is because she averages 32 points a game, but she's going to shoot 38% or better from three. There's nothing inefficient about that. You know what I mean?
I got you. Yeah. No, I know what you're saying, because, hey, you know who else does that? The girl from Texas. Is it Booker? The freshman from Texas. She does the same thing. She takes tough mid-range shots.
It's because, a lot of times that's what we're used to seeing it. I watch a lot of that in the summer, right, with AAU, right. And it's a
tough way to make a living.
Yeah. Hey, but you know what? They're both. But remember too, they're both freshmen.
Yeah.
So let's see as they grow, and let's see if they
USC's got a good class coming in too, right?
Yeah, it's outstanding.
So, that might be fun next year.
Yeah, we're watching the end of Paige and Caitlin. I mean, we tend to forget their freshman years when they were.
Well, Paige Becker hasn't played very much college basketball.
We got one more year, Paige too. She's coming back.
Yeah, most definitely.
She has missed so much.
Like 2 full years, right?
Yeah.
Time.
Yeah.
So,
and you guys were talking about the NIL. That's where the NIL is good, right? Like you said, you only got a certain amount of time. Who knows if her body's going to hold up for 10 years in the professional league? You know what I mean? So, like you said, man, you got to get while the getting is good while you can.
Well, especially in women's basketball, though, even if she can hold up for 10 years, she might make more money in the next 2 years at UConn.
Oh, most definitely. Yeah.
Because I think the max
what
salary.
Caitlin Clark is doing.
She wants to move on.
And I appreciate it, Michigan Lance.
Hey, thank you, guys.
Yes, sir. I think the thing with Caitlin Clark is, I think ultimately as athletes, you want to play at whatever the highest level is.
Yeah, that's what Severe was saying last week, right? When the big three came up, that like she had this offer for $5 million and whatever.
Although that would be tough to turn down.
That's what I said, right? But I also understand, like, hey, and he said this, I don't know if it's accurate or not. He thought she was fairly well off in terms of her family and stuff.
Yeah, I don't know her.
I don't either. But if that's true, that also makes a difference. Right? If you've never needed for things, then it's a lot easier to be like, oh, I'm going to be okay money-wise. Whereas if you're come from a situation where you always want it, like just needed a little bit more, then it's really hard to turn down those paychecks.
Yeah, and I think the level in which she kind of loves competing. I'm still laughing at. He held it against me the way that I frame my discussions.
That's just how you are. That's how you operate.
I just seldom say anything too loose, man. I usually give it some thought. My bad.
I usually give it thought, but then I go ahead and say they're out of pocket thing anyway.
My bad. I don't just fly off the handle. I apologize, Mr.
I fly off the handle. I think about it, and then I fly again. Coming up on the show, we'll give you the lineup and more coming up next on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
See you. Have a good day. Love you.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back.
From Angel Reese. Free throw off.
Zone, but also so Iowa.
A full fist.
We will be back.
Zone.
We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Zone, but also so Iowa can rebound and box out better.
Clark dumps it. Henniger gets denied. A full-fisted rejection from Angel Reese.
We're back here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. We're live from the Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill here on the Pillar Exterior stage. Going to get the lineup to you before we get to anything else, because otherwise we will never get the lineup to you. Coming up at 8 o'clock, we're going to have John Higgins. He is a former, he's retired from reffing, right? Yeah, former.
He oversees the officiating committee.
John Higgins, the former official, oversees the officiating committee for NCAA men's basketball.
That's good prep.
I mean, all right.
Wow.
Gonna be one of those today, huh?
Wow.
We're gonna talk to Mike Schaefer. He is from Husker 24/7. He's back from his little extended sabbatical.
He's tweeting about Cleveland, so that's good.
Yeah, that's a good sign. Then we will talk to our guy John Fanta at 9:45 a.m. to talk a little college hoops as well. Before we get to that, though, DB, you wanted to talk about the women's games last night.
Did I?
I mean, allegedly.
Are you sure?
I mean, if you'd like to talk about my prep some more, we can.
Yeah, we can get to that.
All right.
I like women's basketball. What's next?
No,
All
I
right.
actually thought
College baseball tonight.
I actually thought that for the most part, just as a guy that watches I don't know about a lot or a little compared to people that love the sport, like Matt DeMarinis or somebody, but I watch a significant amount.
You probably have a more varied amount of viewing since he has to really zero in on his teams that he covers.
I was pleasantly surprised at the behavior last night relative to what I've seen in some less prominent stages.
Okay, so give some context there. What do you mean?
Well, I felt like Caitlin Clark was pretty under control.
We've seen her be a little demonstrative with calls,
for sure.
And refs. And
Angel Reese was better than
like last year's in the championship game.
Well, even a couple weeks ago.
Yeah. She was also banged up. I don't know how much that. Like sometimes when you get hurt, you kind of get out of your head a little bit.
Yeah, and I thought Mulkey was better than she
she
typically
was
is.
pretty toned down.
I was like, if that was kind of like the first time, and we'll get the numbers, I think, later this morning.
Yeah, I've
for the
Googled.
view.
I haven't seen them yet.
Yeah. You said anywhere from 9 to 10. You're going to probably be.
I said no lower than 8, but I thought I think I landed on 10.
Okay. You may very well be right. The thing about it was, I don't know how many new eyeballs Caitlin Clark is going to get, because I think she's been must-watch all year. But you probably had a few fringe, maybe not.
I think you it's more than you think.
More like haven't seen her. I'm just going to tune in tonight. You think?
I think so.
Okay, maybe. Because I don't have a good grasp of that. I guess what I was gonna say is I don't like if you've seen her or Angel Reese or you're scrolling through social media.
Yeah.
Well, not so much Beckers and Juju, because they haven't come with the criticism and the scrutiny.
Oh, okay, sure.
Right? I mean, Paige Beckers is kind of more of the all-American personality, and Juju Watkins is so new to the scene.
Yeah,
She
freshman,
doesn't have a real
reputation
national
yet.
reputation yet for her delivery. But Reese and Clark are talked about, a couple times a week, and a lot of times on national shows in terms of how you officiate them, how you handle them, channeling the emotion.
Clark especially. And
I felt like I was shocked almost.
Yesterday was mostly about the basketball, which I think was a positive.
And even when there was a couple of ticky-tack calls, like Reese kept her.
She kept her composure.
Yeah.
Even when she fouled out, like she was upset.
Obviously. I know it's a really, really bad call, but she didn't say a word. I mean, outside of the, get me the damn ball.
Yeah.
Which
reasonable.
That's
totally reasonable for how that game was playing out.
And a lot of people are like that.
100%.
Right. So I'd
be more concerned if she wasn't like that.
I watched, 2 games from darn near start to finish, and felt pretty good about the level and style of play. I think it was a good night.
I thought it was more entertaining.
It's a good night for women's college basketball.
I thought it was more entertaining than most of the men's games from the weekend.
100%.
Like I think I said on Twitter, but the only game that came even close was North Carolina Bama. Was a pretty good game. Depending on stylistically what you like, Illinois Iowa State wasn't terrible, but I had more fun watching Iowa and LSU last night than I did just about any game over the weekend, and it's because stylistically it was just good basketball. It was a quality product, and there wasn't a lot of the extras, right? We didn't see, Caitlin Clark wasn't looking in the stands for her dad and yelling at refs and whatever, and Kim Mulkey wasn't doing Kim Mulkey stuff, and Angel Reese was a competitor.
I couldn't believe how well behaved she was. I say well behaved like she's a child. She's not, but I just mean
she acts childish sometimes, though.
She
was pretty composed,
and it was in the the environment. Again, one of those games where coming through the television, much like Purdue's fan base, seemed extremely loud. It seemed like every shot was like potentially the game winner.
Yeah.
It's just these loud.
There's a lot of tension.
And and sometimes it's easy. And I'm not a huge officials, how the game is officiated guy. Typically, if I want to complain one way or the other, I'm just like, I mean, it is important how inconsistency, but I'm not like, oh, that call this or that. I'm not.
I try not to pick on individual calls,
but that
I thought it was reasonably well officiated.
And one of the things I definitely want to talk to Higgy about is block charge. They've tried to clean it up,
and they haven't really.
But I wonder if the more criteria, because you've lessened up having to be the amount of time you got to be set. It's more about if you're sliding or
legal
you're not.
Guarding position,
and we've gotten into what's a good example? Oh, like verticality, like going up to contest shots. Like we've tried to get into some of the subjective, like bang bang things, but I wonder if it's any better.
Well, it's kind of, it's a weird comparison, but it kind of reminds me of how they tried to define a catch in football, and the more criteria that we put on it, the less it made any sense at all.
And we heard a similar pushback from the NFLPA, right, about the hip drop tackle.
Yeah. Or it's like, hey, I know you're trying to define this thing, but the more details you put on it, the more, it's got to be X, Y, Z in order to qualify, the harder it's going to be to officiate. Like the reason officials exist is to make subjective calls and to try and take all subjectivity out of that. I get you're trying to make it fair, but most of the time you're just getting it wrong, right? Like that's the problem with putting too many constraints on these things. A lot of times you can just look and see and maybe this isn't a good way to do it, but just gut feeling like that's a block or a charge. Like you can just tell. Like if you watch a lot of basketball, you can say, hey, that defender was in a good position. They had a right to that space. That's a charge. Or you can say, hey, they were moving. They were trying to catch up. That's a block. Or you can say, hey, the offensive player lowered their shoulder. They initiated contact. Like they don't even care who initiates contact anymore, which I feel like matters, right? If you're an offensive player and you're initiating contact, you should get less leeway than if you're not initiating that contact, right? Like that seems plain and simple, but it doesn't really seem like how it goes anymore.
We'll get some clarity too on. And this primarily stems from what I hear in like high school games and in youth games with like over the back. And when I hear national analysts,
I have no idea what over the back
say
is.
the term over the back.
I have no idea.
Well, they don't use it anymore for number one.
Yeah.
Right.
It's
either
term.
a push or a not.
Yeah.
And I think it clouds people's judgment because if let's say
like if you're Zach Edey and you reach over someone,
you're technically over their back. But if you don't
make contact,
you're
fine.
Not
a foul.
Right? You see guys go up, and
which I think is why they changed the terminology.
It is why they changed the terminology.
Because you can go over their back without fouling them.
That is 100%. And so, there's the pushback, that's nitpicky.
Yeah.
That's not nitpicky because what happens is if you've got a 41-inch vertical, and I'm a little guy, and we're out here hooping, and you're going to get one of those threes that you miss.
Yeah, you can go over me without fouling me.
And you just jump over me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh shoot, man,
He's up there.
He's up there. You're like, oh man, rebound. I'm like, oh, he went over my back, and they're gonna say, oh, he didn't touch you.
Yeah,
right. Like
I'd be like, no, but he's over my back. Like he jumped over my back.
Like that. Those kinds of things matter because the more educated people are on what the actual rules are, I just think the more longevity we have for officials, and the less complaining we'll be doing for no reason.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Right? Like just
if you understand.
Yeah, just handicap us with the facts.
Yeah.
and leave it to us to do the rest. But when there's ambiguity on what it is and what it's called, like it just perpetuates madness. Like you can't say that.
Yeah.
And not go back and get it, right?
Yeah, that's fair. We'll talk to Higgy at 8:00. We'll wrap up hour number 1 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. Coming up next on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities.
will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Wrapping up hour number one here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. SDB, I'm Ravi Lulla here on the Pillar Exterior stage. And we have a lot to get to today. We've got some baseball tonight. Cody wants to talk about baseball, Creighton and Nebraska tonight. Cody, what's going on, bud?
What's up, boys?
Oh,
well,
Commander Cody.
Tonight. I mean, Robbie Anderson's been on top of this for the last 24 hours. Best winning percentage between the two teams since 2005.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Rob Rainman Anderson.
Yeah, got Nebraska Nebraska on their 10-game win streak. I mean, Creighton's feeling pretty good after sweeping Stanford.
Got my main man
No.
Nolan Sailors swinging a hot stick. His dad could rake too, so I get it. Comes by it honestly.
So,
no
I got
disrespect to
a question
mom.
for you guys.
Yeah.
Question for you guys.
What's up?
Over under 5.5 pitchers used by Creighton tonight. Because we know how Ed Service likes to play Nebraska.
I think this one may be different. I'm going to take the under.
Yeah, I would agree.
All righty. Does Will Walsh go over 5 innings?
Midweek. Will he get a quality start? I will say yes.
All right, Ravi?
Boy, that's gonna be close.
I go no. I'm gonna go no.
That's gonna be close.
I think they give him one time through the lineup.
That's it.
Yeah, and then I was all hot on Pro League, and then Northwestern kind of lit Pro League up on Sunday.
Yeah, so
that
and I think that finished what 8-7. I don't think that
10, yeah.
I don't think that probably went the way Nebraska wanted it to. But the name of that game in Evanston is to win and get out, right? Like you just can't afford.
Yeah,
you can't afford
to watch any of those Northwestern games.
Yeah, I did. So it's funny too because I talked to Ben. I text Ben McLaughlin and Greg Sharp. I'm like, hey, have a good call, fellas, because the two early games like to start. You don't want, and again, no disrespect to BTN Plus. You don't want those broadcasts. So I'm always going to take 9 times out of 10. I'm always going to take Benny Mac and Sharpie anyway.
Oh yeah, I always go with Sharpie and McLaughlin.
So what is it? I know. I'm sure you want to give some love to Cole Evans. Like, what are we talking about? You kind of gravitate towards the 308.
Yes. I do want to ask you a couple pro baseball questions real quick before I let you go.
Okay.
At any point, did you turn on the Astros game last night?
No, I didn't. I knew what Blanco was doing because it kept going across the bottom of my screen, and when it went red and they'd go breaking news, like I kind of knew what it was. But they're going to win the AL West again, so that's going to be boring.
Yeah, I don't know. Mariners could.
I have so. I'm riding them again. I picked them to be in the World Series last year. I'm riding them again as one of my wild card teams this year.
Yeah, too. I had them in the wild card. My next question is: before the season started, what did you think would be more likely? Marlins being 0-5 or the Buccos being 5-0?
Definitely Pirates. So it's funny. I asked one of our local media guys. He's a baseball dork like me, and we watch a lot of spring training. And I said to him, I go, and I can't remember. It was Puck. Puck was on the mound for the Marlins. This is in spring training, and I sent him the picture, and I go, and I asked him, I go, hey, is this the year that the Marlins pitching staff finally reaches their potential? Because, Alcantara was rough last year after a huge year. And we both were like highly doubted. But Pittsburgh being 5-0 is much more of a much more of a.
And then my last question before I let you guys go. Will someone please just knock the Yankees off the pedestal?
I don't know. We're gonna get to our predictions at some point this week, and my MVP in the AL is off to a great start. So it was between him and Rodriguez, and I went with Soto. So I want Soto to keep doing Soto things.
All right, you guys have a good day, and can't wait for tonight.
Thanks, buddy.
Thanks, Cody. If you want to join our show like Cody and Lance have, you can give us a call at 888-638-4876.
You're dang right.
You're dang right.
So that Nebraska-Creighton game tonight is first pitch at 6 p.m. at Charles Schwab.
Schwab at the Schwabe. Is Sindelar turning and burning already? Where is he?
Oh,
did he give himself the day off?
I don't know.
He probably bagged a couple of elephants this week, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna give myself a couple of days to get ready for this."
Text him, see where he's at.
Yeah, I know.
If you're not feeling like braving the cold tonight, you can also watch that on Flow Baseball.
All that's missing, is their membership has changed to Flow. If you are interested in their pay service,
I used to. So I
cut them off for wrestling.
Yeah, so I usually will just go and kind of month by month when I need them.
Yep, I hear you.
So I had them when Creighton was in the Bahamas, and then I picked them up for something. And I canceled it. Then I picked them up for something else because it's like $18 a month. Or something.
And
like it's not cheap.
And so when they were doing the Nebraska thing early for baseball, I was like, let's figure out if we got other options. Just because you're not going to get the number of games that you want, but this
you don't get the bang for your buck there.
No, in any other year, this would be a heck of a. I'm gonna probably sound a little biased, but I don't think so. This should probably be a top 25 matchup.
Oh, I think so.
Right?
I think so.
Because I'm not quite sure why Creighton isn't in the top 25, but they gotta be.
I mean, if you look at their RPI, they're just not in the same neighborhood as Nebraska in terms of their non-con schedule to kind of justify the gaudy record. So I think people just look at that and Stanford being down hurts them quite a bit because that was kind of their marquee series.
And it was funny too. I text Nolan's dad. This is the middle of the day. Maybe they had opening pitch, but I was like, "Hey, how's Palo Alto? What's going on in Stanford?" He sent me a picture of they were on the diamond in the middle of play. He's like, "Yeah, not too bad out here." I'm like, that campus.
It's about one of the most beautiful things.
He's like,
incredible.
Yeah, it is cool too because he's a real one.
Yeah,
and he's like, not quite my crowd, like my type of crowd of people, but I'm enjoying the baseball.
What do you mean by that?
I was like, all right, Nico, do your thing. Yeah, but Nolan's off to he's healthy, man. He had the bad hand injury last year.
Yeah.
I think it slowed him down.
No,
late.
he's raking right now. I mean, he's getting after it.
Trust me when I tell you it runs in the family.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. I'm dead. His dad hit P rockets. I'm like, what is going on?
Yeah, Nolan's raking for sure.
I want to backtrack on Walsh though. I don't know if he gets 5. You said under anyway, right?
Said
so
under.
You're safe.
Yeah, I don't. I'm guessing midweek they're just not going to stretch anybody.
Man, but so here's the thing. I think Childress is a little different.
Yeah, I mean maybe.
And they want to win. Like they're kind of on a roll.
Well, and this is
so I think you may have to play a certain way, even
that you normally wouldn't.
And it's
also I understand Creighton's RPI
because you can't drop it.
Well, yeah, that's what I mean. So like Creighton's RPI isn't where they want it to be, but it's still going to be better than most of the Big Ten schedule because I think Creighton's like 50, 51 right now. So they're going to be significantly better than most of their Big Ten schedules. This is an important game for Nebraska. It's also an important game for Creighton, obviously, because the Big East isn't exactly world beaters either. So you may be right. You may play this different than a regular midweek series.
I mean, I'll stick with 5, but it doesn't.
You don't feel good about it?
Nah,
no.
But I'm gonna ride it just because. I mean, you got to play this one to win. But I think both teams are gonna ultimately need this one.
Yeah. You're going to, and especially if Nebraska is not able to make up Kansas State at any point this season, which I don't think they're planning on.
I don't either.
They maybe give it a try later, but as of right now, they're under no obligation to because they actually canceled it rather than postponing it. But I mean, it's pretty cool. I like that. I like that both teams are good.
Me too.
It's better.
It's been since I was in.
It's been a while.
College, and more in high school. I mean, the '90s was really good.
Yeah. Well, especially for Creighton,
early 2000s,
early 90s were really good, but early 2000s they were both pretty solid.
Nebraska was way good.
Yeah, Nebraska was really, really good in the early 2000s. Creighton was okay, depending on the year.
But yeah, it actually. I mean, you probably got to go back to.
I mean, 05 is the stat that Rob put out.
Yeah.
When they were both the combined was over 800, which is I think he said it's only happened 8 times, 3 times, 8 times. I get the numbers.
Is it? It's the.
Yeah, it is. It's the shape of the number. It's
like
it's happening in my head
for a numbers. Whatever you called me a weirdo when I remember, I'm in the exact same thing. Because that's the one number.
Yeah, like 8 and 3
that can mess with me when I want to recall something in my head.
So the reason it happens for me is I visualize things in my head, right? When I'm remembering things. And so the 3 and the 8 look too similar. It's not like I just have the number stored back there. It's like I have a picture of the number stored back there. And when I bring it up, it's like I can't quite make it out if it's an 8 or a 3.
That was
4,
back,
6, 8, 12.
It was back when I was so interested in, like, baseball it's still probably my favorite sport,
Mhm.
but I could go and watch practices. I could just go over to Creighton,
Mhm.
and I'm like, how are these guys practicing so quick? Or you could, go to Nebraska, and those were the days. It would be nice, and I'm telling you, there's so much baseball talent.
Mhm.
Like, it can be a thing.
I've always said
It can be a thing.
Nebraska's way better in baseball than people have any idea.
Yeah.
Like, you could
That's not far off.
I've been banging that drum about Omaha basketball for a long time, or for all week or last couple of weeks, about how you could build a winner here. I think both Nebraska, Creighton, and Omaha could build winners here based on a lot of local talent. Coming up next, we've got John Higgins. We're going to talk some officiating with Higgy here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. Welcome to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Kicking off hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. And we're live from the Pillar Exterior Stage. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. We are joined now on the phone by John Higgins. He's the coordinator of officials for the Basketball Officiating Consortium. John, that's a little bit of a wordy title. Do you have something shorter that we can call you?
The boss.
The boss, I guess.
I didn't know if you had a cool acronym, like, they call the director of basketball operations the DOBO. Like, I got like a KOBOK. That's all I got.
Well, maybe head idiot in charge. Maybe.
Higgy, how you been, man? I always worry about you about this time because usually when I see you, you're one of those guys that's like reverse aging. So I always usually start with that. But at this point, you have to. Is this about the only time of the year you miss it, or are you done?
No,
because of the headaches.
You know what? I missed it. I missed being on the court all year. That was hard. That was hard coming off the court. I did it for 35 straight years in Division I. So that was hard. That was hard. It's still hard. And refereeing is way easier than doing my job. Believe me, I guess when you have 190 officials that you have to not just tutor and mentor and train and assign. You have, I had 65 institutions, and so I have 65 coaches. So every night they play, half of them are going to be pissed off at me for some reason. Something our referees did or didn't do. So it's a different role, but it was fun. It got better as the year went on.
It's interesting because just knowing your personality, like you like things right, can I just say particular without sounding offensive? Like,
no,
okay.
That's good.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when you have now there's so many other people other than just you and your crew, right? That has to be like a managing process, doesn't it? For just your own personality's sake, because you can't control it all.
Exactly. It's well, I've run my own business for a long time.
Yeah.
So it's hard to control everything there. So to control 190 dudes and ladies, it's and they don't do what you expect them to do. And that's really, really, really frustrating some nights. Now they've gotten better as the year has gone on, and they see what my vision is. So that's been that's encouraging and nice. But then again, there's some times that they fail. And for instance, we had a game late in the year that we missed a violation on a free throw, and it was a blatant violation with 3 seconds to go in the game. It could have changed the outcome of who gets first place in the league and the NCAA seeding, and or tied for first and go down to a 3 seed in the conference tournament. Now I had to suspend guys, and that's hard to do, but I had no choices.
We're talking with John Higgins, the head referee in charge. We'll go with that for now. John, so I'm watching obviously a lot of the games over the last couple of weeks, and you get a lot of variance in terms of how tightly or loosely games are called. I guess as somebody who tries to mentor these officials, like, is there kind of set instructions on how game flow and freedom of movement is intended to go, or is it left more up to the individual officials and crews' discretion?
Well, there's an NCAA coordinator that tells them how to referee and when and we do our own thing. Obviously, every coordinator has their own philosophy and thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Now, my idea is I like freedom of movement 10-1-4. I don't think we did a great job in some of the games in the tournament. I.e., I don't think Creighton was. Creighton is a finesse team, and when they get out physical, they have a hard time. They do. And if they let them play that way, it's can be rough on teams. I like to keep the best players in the game.
Mm-hmm.
because the coaches want the best players in the game. And I want to referee the best players because you don't want to referee the 8, 9, or 10 guys because there's a reason why he's an 8, 9, or 10 guy, right?
Yeah.
So I want to referee the best guys on the court. So do you pass on plays on some of the 1, 2, and 3 guys? Yeah, you may pass on a play, but you can't pass on obvious play.
Mm-hmm.
So get the big stuff. Something God and everybody can see. And then if you can pass on plays, pass them. Now a foul's a foul.
Mm-hmm.
If it's blatant, it's it's a shooting foul, it's a block charge play. It's a 2-car collision. You got to call those things. But if you could let the players decide some instances, let them decide it. If there's just a little bump and it doesn't affect the play, I pass on those plays. If it's away from the ball, try to pass on those plays. You got to know your personnel. You got to know your teams and your personnel. Those are the 2 biggest things. Know who the best players are. Not that you're going to take care of those best players, but know who they are.
Mm.
So how do you deal with coaches? There, like you mentioned, Tennessee. I think UConn does this to a certain extent. We see a lot of teams in the Big East, like Providence does this a lot, where they kind of operate under the assumption that you're just not going to call everything if they're really, really physical. How do you balance what you're talking about there with, trying to have a smooth game flow and keep your best players in the game and things like that versus coaches that are sort of trying to take advantage of that philosophy?
Well, if teams' depth is they have 10 players that play, they don't care how many fouls they give up. Like, for instance, when they play against Zach Edey, and maybe you're going to talk. Maybe
that you can stay right there and expound on it if you, in one swoop.
Yeah, because Zach Edey, he's very, very difficult to referee. 7'4", 320 pounds, what have you. Very strong guy. There's just nobody like him, and it's very, very difficult to referee. We could probably call another 5 to 10 fouls in a game on the defense against him. I would, if I'm a team or coach, I'm not going to play as physical as I possibly can behind Zach Edey, because if you play solid defense and you let him displace you, you could get an offensive foul on the guy because he will go through you.
Mm-hmm.
But the way they're playing try to play physical and put an arm bar on, which is legal when they have the ball. If they're back toward the basket, you can do that. However, if you watch the defensive guys, they're doing everything under the rules to try to just keep them away from the basket, which is very difficult. There's at least 10 fouls you could get on those players, but you got to draw the line. What's displacement is a big key. If you displace a guy, it's probably a foul. So if there's gonna be some hand-to-hand combat, offense, defense on the post area itself, there's gonna be hand-to-hand combat.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's equal pressure, you could probably pass on it. But once it gets to be towards displacement, then you got to make a choice, whether it be offense or defense.
Higgy, one of the cool things about you that I've enjoyed is, successful as you've been, you're always helping out, right? We'll see you at local games, some youth games, see you at high school games. Like, you just the visibility and kind of trying to mentor where you can. Is it safe to say, because they seem to have the most verbiage applied to the rules now, that the block charge and the dreaded no longer existing over the back, like when you guys are cleaning up those things in the terminology, does that help or complicate things more in the long run? Is it having unintended consequences?
I think it has unintended consequences. I really do. The more you put into referees' heads and coaches' heads, the more difficult it becomes for everybody. Now they're thinking too much, and instead of just doing, it's just like a player. Sometimes you think too much. You're shooting a shot, or you're trying to throw a pitch, or you're doing what have you in any kind of sport. You think too much, you may not do it right. If you think too much in referee, just go out referee. Just go out and get the plays. Let it come to you. Don't go after things you don't need to get, which happens especially young guys. They think way too much instead of letting the game slow down. And it happens with experience too. But it does complicate some things when you put too much stuff into the referee's head. If you put too many ifs, ands, or buts into people's heads, they think too much and they're not any good. I just try to make it simple, just like anything. Make it simple, and it will be much, much, much better.
John, what is the most fair criticism you've heard of refereeing in the college game?
Fair criticism.
Because, people complain all the time, right? But, like, is there anything you've heard that you're like, yeah, that's probably reasonable?
How it's inconsistent. And
gotcha.
And it's inconsistent from region to region, game to game, official to official. And that's probably the most reasonable thing I hear a fan ever say. Now, you hear fans say, call it evenly, some really dumb things like that. You hear all that stuff all the time.
Call both ways.
Call both ways. You look at the board at 6-6. Okay, let's call it both ways. So it's hard to.
Do you guys hear? Do you hear that certain conferences, like, because the stereo, it's not even a stereotype. Like, the style comes from some place, right? The Big East is officiated like this. In the Big Ten, it's like this. In the Mountain West, this is what it's allowed to be. Like, that comes from somewhere. Can you have consistency across conferences, or is it consistency within the particular conferences?
I think it's within the particular conferences.
Yeah.
However, if I am a supervisor of so many leagues, it should be the same on every league I'm refereeing. Now, say it like the Pac-12, for instance, was more of a running, finesse, freedom of movement type league. The Mountain West is more like it was more like the Big 12. Without is probably as good as players.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, you got Ledee at San Diego State should be, he's 6'8", 6'9", about his legs or his arms are as big as my thighs. He'd be a great tight end in the NFL. You watch. I mean, he'll be a pro. He'll get drafted probably in the NBA. But then you get guys like that and the whole San Diego State team, they play defensively like pit bulls.
Mm-hmm.
And they're aggressive. So what happens? The other teams want to play like that. So that turns that league into that. It's like Big 12. It was West Virginia when Huggy was there. And guess what? It would turn the whole league just like that. When the ball goes up in the Big 12, it's like 6-7 pit bulls going after the ball. The Big 10, half-court game. More post guys than other leagues. And it was slow down, half court league. ACC, open free market. It's open, free flowing, scores at 80, 90 points a game. Big East is I think turned in more of the old Big East, where it was, when back in the day in the 80s and 90s when it would be a war every single night. It seems like it's gone that way. So every league has their own personality, like you said, and it's part of it has to just to do maybe with the supervisor or just with the style of play each coach wants to play.
John, so I got to ask you this because this is something that as a Creighton fan comes up for me all the time. Creighton just doesn't foul very much while they're playing defense. And then you've got fans that, you're watching let's say they're playing San Diego State or something like that. You just mentioned they kind of play like pit bulls on the other side of the ball. Sometimes calling it evenly means there's going to be a foul discrepancy, right? I don't know that people always appreciate that.
Absolutely. 100%.
That's a good point.
It's a great point. So when you got a team like Creighton that was like, for instance, last year, they're number one in least amount of fouls called against them, right?
Mm-hmm.
San Diego State is the most fouls called against, or in the top 5 or so of fouls called against them. And when it's 10-10 or whatever the fouls. I don't remember what the fouls were in that game. That's not really evenly called game.
Right.
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 That's it. So if it was 5 fouls for Creighton in total, and they had 15, well, that's probably an evenly called game. If you say are consistently called game as how they play through 35 games throughout the year, that's what I think is consistency. Now the fans would say, "Oh, it's not consistent. It's not 15 to 15." But
so you take a lot of flack for calling it that way, though, right? I mean,
exactly. So it depends on how teams play. It really does.
All right, let me get you out of here on this, Iggy, because you've seen so much and you've seen skill, right? Whether it's better or worse or whatever, you've seen the game has changed dramatically. So now you've got all these flare screens, you've got pin downs, you've got those high ball screens. Has the skill in the open court helped, hurt, made it easier, more difficult to officiate the game of basketball?
I don't think it's really changed it that much. People complain about that high ball screen
all the time.
Exactly, right? Exactly. I mean, you hear it every single
It's
game.
unbelievable. He's moving.
He's moving. Yeah, well, the rule of thumb is he's got to have 2 feet facing the opponent, right? And he's got to doesn't have to be necessarily stationary. He's got to be 2 feet facing the opponent. He can't move into him. He can be going backwards if the guy causes contact. It depends on, is he too wide on the screen? Which watch a screen at any screen. Is it wider than your shoulders? Yes. Is it so? The rule is your shoulder width. Your feet have to be shoulder width. Have you ever seen a screen that's just your shoulder width? You get knocked right over, right?
I was going to say, boy, they could never officiate Edie because he's coming on that high ball screen about 70% of the time they have the ball. You're going to see that a ton.
Yeah, exactly. And guess what? When his feet go out, they're about 8 foot from each other, right?
Like 7'4", so that's actually pretty close.
I mean, did you see the other night? He didn't need the ladder to cut down the net.
Yeah. Reach on up there.
So, the rule is on the high ball screen or any screen is if your feet are wider or you're excessive, and I would tell this to coaches all the time. They said, but he's illegal. I said, it's not illegal until there's contact. Now, if there's contact, he hits him in the chest, it's not illegal. If there's contact and he hits him in the leg, if it's wide, that's illegal.
Gotcha.
So we would call that. But or if they are moving when contact happens,
sure,
that's illegal.
They kind of throw the hip out a little bit.
Yeah, but it makes it impossible to play through ball screens sometimes, which is how I'd want a lot of guys to play.
You can't. Now, coaches have gotten good defensively, and I get a bunch of film about how they're doing it, going over a high ball screen and illegally hooking the screener with his arm and going around him. There's coaches teach that.
Yep.
They teach it. I've learned that from I didn't know it before this year, but this is what they do. They teach how to get through that high ball screen, even though the high ball screen is illegal. They're teaching how to do it. They hook a guy, and then it could be a foul on that guy.
Yeah, that's interesting.
It's very difficult.
You're the best, Iggy. We
appreciate it so much. Great stuff there, and thank you for justifying my feelings a little bit about how Creighton went down. We appreciate talking to you.
All right, guys.
Good talk, Higgins. Thanks.
That's John Higgins. He's the coordinator of officials for the Basketball Officiating Consortium and a 35-year referee at the Division I level. That's good stuff there.
It is. It's a lot.
Man, the screen thing, I never really thought about it in those terms, right? It's like, okay, he's wider than his feet, is wider than his base, right? But there's no contact, so it doesn't matter. He hits him in the chest, so it doesn't matter. It's not until he actually makes contact with the part that's outside the frame and that it matters.
Yeah, and 85% of these teams
just go right through the chest.
They're trying to, because what's everybody doing? You're always getting ball screens.
Yes.
Like it is.
I would just teach my guys to trip over legs.
It's like it's not the new thing, but it is the thing.
Yeah.
You're right.
Somebody needs a 3, right?
It's, hey, little flare screen, get him out to the wing. And you can see these guards struggling to play through the screener to get out to the three-point shooter.
It's really hard.
And that's a fact. People lose their
I would teach
mind.
my guys just to trip over legs of the screener.
That's pretty cool, though, about because you see it all the time.
With
the technique with the hook to play around the ball.
Because they start getting around, they kind of reach.
Yeah.
And that, I don't think I've seen it called yet. Because you get the hook all the time when you've got the ball.
It beats getting guys stoned, though, because sometimes those guys run into
they get laid out. It's bad.
That's the consistency thing.
It's hard. And there's too many officials. Not saying that you have any other choice, right? But
you mean on the floor or in the game?
You've got 300 teams in Division I, so you have to have so many officials to cover those games.
But those guys are working so much. I don't know.
But I mean, compared to the NBA, you're just dealing with a huge number of officials. And it's really hard. Yeah. The more people you're dealing with, the harder it is to keep consistent levels across those leagues. Because, again, like Higgy was saying, you've got different people in charge of different leagues and in charge of different regions.
I wondered how that would wear on his personality because he's very together.
If you
his hair's always perfect. He's super fit.
If you think there's a right way to do things, and then people who you are in charge of aren't doing things that way, that could drive you crazy.
Yeah, and you could kind of hear it. He's like, it's tough.
You could tell it's something that he's like working through, right? Because if you're wired that way, there's about nothing that will get you out of that.
And I think he's a standard guy. Like
100%.
There's a standard.
It's not entirely different what we see from coaches, right? If you have, Coach Rule talks about a standard all the time. If you have guys that aren't meeting that standard and that's what you expect from them, it'll drive you crazy. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure you get it with the high school kids.
Oh yeah.
Right? You guys set a standard.
They make fun of me all the time just because I say, hey, the standard is the standard. Okay, Mike Tomlin. Well, he wasn't the first one to say it. Like, coaches have been saying that for a long time, but he's the one that gets credit.
Well, in one way or another, they've been saying it, right? Whatever it sounds like, they're saying the same thing. It's just that you just particularly kind of gravitate toward a Mike Tomlin because,
Well, he, everybody, they had his on loop.
Because you're a big Omar Epps guy.
Wow. Continually, Shane.
It's incredible that he starred in Love and Basketball,
one of the greatest movies ever made,
and then became an NFL head coach. That's unbelievable.
Big Love and Basketball guy.
It's not bad.
Wow, really?
Ravi it's pretty good.
Ravi here for raining on parade.
No, I mean it's pretty good. I
liked it because it wasn't like neither his dad nor who's the president in 24.
Oh, Dennis Haysworth.
Is that who it is, Shane?
Haysworth?
Like he he didn't look great playing the game, and neither did
Pedro Serrano.
Yeah, neither did Epps.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, I could kind of live with that. It's not like Ray Allen. He got a game where everybody looks sweet because he's got 8 NBA guys there. But that movie was fantastic, and I used to have a thing for
Dennis Haysbert. That's what it is.
Sinai.
I kind of
Lathan.
I appreciate the games where they actually look like they know how to play basketball in movies. I like that a little bit. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. I like it when they look like they're functional athletes when they're.
Darnell Jefferson was great in the program.
Give me like some blue chips. You got some real ball players in there.
I just watched that.
I've been seeing clips on my TikTok all the time.
I literally, and that's the reason why I watched it. Do you know what I watched it on?
What?
YouTube.
The whole thing's on
because
YouTube?
of TikTok. Yeah, all the commercials where he's like cussing out Happy.
The number of movies I watch because TikTok sends me clips of them. I don't even understand it. I don't even recognize what we're doing.
Reacher.
That's next for me. We got more Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up.
We will be back. We will be back. A will fire it out. A will
off a screen, spins with 3. Rebound, Caravan out. Tiara, a triple. Free throw line. He's a first-team All-America. This
layup good. 1.9 to go. Tigers inbounded. 1.9 to go.
Redemption tour is the Final Four. Lawyer the rebound. 5 seconds. Lawyer the
4.
Lawyer the rebound.
Go to the Final Four.
Lawyer the rebound. 5 seconds.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We're halfway through the show here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube, as well as live from the Pillar Exterior stage here at the Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. Live tonight is going to be the Omaha Supernovas against the San Diego Mojo. That's a road game, so you won't be able to attend that unless you are planning on hopping a flight to San Diego this afternoon, which couldn't beat the weather out here. I mean, I wouldn't mind San Diego weather over what we got going on. I know
That'd be a little much for me.
I know you're a Four Seasons guy, and you know.
Are you guys going?
It's probably not too bad in San Diego. Are they going to get high 60s, 70s today?
I'd guess like 74. That's my number.
That's pushing it.
You think so?
Yeah, for me.
Oh, for you. I thought you meant for the number.
Okay, I'll give you 80. Right now, it's only 51.
What's the high today for San Diego?
It's surprisingly cool.
Okay.
65.
All right.
66.
So that's good for you.
Yeah,
That's right in your wheelhouse.
That's perfect.
Do you like wearing your hoodies and stuff?
Yeah, I know. They're probably miserable. They're like,
they're freezing. They're wearing parkas out there.
Get out of here with that.
But our Omaha Supernovas, they'll be back on Thursday, the 4th, at the CHI Health Center, 7 p.m. against the Columbus Fury. Go get your tickets at supernovas.com. Really good stuff there from Higgy. I appreciate him listening to me whine about Creighton a little bit and indulging me. But
See, we're so why it works with us. We're so different. Like you openly made it known that it was personal.
Yeah.
I just would have generally have asked the questions without assigning. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like
it's what I'm doing is I'm taking ammunition from people listening, right? Because everybody knows I'm a Creighton fan. I can't change that, right? So if I ask the
that is the best. You know what? This is for all you people out there that think I'm a hater.
Yeah, like
if you want to change it, you can.
Look at you.
I'm doing the 8 Mile thing, right? Where I'm just like, hey, I know what you're gonna say about me, right? So if I ask the question, people know why I'm asking the question.
Yeah.
So I might as well tell you why I'm asking the question, right?
Yeah, I'm your cheddar bomb. Don't worry about it. I got you.
Just don't shoot.
You asked me the same question last year.
Don't shoot yourself in the leg. That's all.
You've
we're
been
trying.
sitting on that for a minute.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I do think though this has been years. I've thought about this and talked about this. Is an even foul count is not a consistently called game.
Yeah, John was right. You know, he's like
like if San Diego State and Creighton are playing each other, the foul count should not be even.
Yeah,
they don't play basketball the same way.
And John grabbed the distinction too. He said enforcing the rule book versus officiating the game is an important distinction to remember.
100%.
It's like just to hear it
out loud,
discussed out loud.
Yeah, by somebody who actually has influence over the way things are officiated. I don't know. I felt a little justified, just not because you kind of get in your head sometimes where you're like, is it just me? Like, am I just being a baby? And I probably am a little bit, but like at least there's some truth there.
You have way more conviction than me because I totally caved because I didn't want to go on a personal crusade.
Sure.
About the over the back thing.
Yeah.
So I was general, so everybody could learn, not just me. I'm like, you know what?
No, I want to be justified.
I'm gonna do that.
If I feel a certain way about
I'm
something,
gonna do that.
If I feel a certain way about something, I want to know whether I'm right or wrong. And I might still feel that way, but at least I know the information that way.
Then the whole key is I try to practice this over however long, is I try not to ask a leading question in a leading way, just so like I know if I'm wrong or not.
See, and I try to acknowledge my biases up front. That way they can understand where I'm coming from by asking the question. Instead of like
and you'll run the risk of them saying, no, not really.
Yeah, and I'm okay with that. Yeah. I can live with that.
Got you.
I would rather them know, hey, this is where I'm coming from. This is why I'm asking the question versus having it because I think it's actually more leading if I don't acknowledge my bias. Like if I'm trying to like take them a certain direction. Whereas if I say, hey, like I watched that Creighton Tennessee game, I had a really hard time with the way that game was officiated. Even though it was reasonably consistent, it was a huge advantage for Tennessee to officiate a game that way. And I don't love that. And I think that's fair to bring up. So I appreciate Higgy kind of indulging us a little bit there.
No, he's good, man.
No, that was really good stuff.
I think the fact that he likes to compete helps too.
Yeah. Well, he mentioned the consistency. It's just so hard with that many officials. It's so hard. You got different officials, different regions, different leagues.
As I just looked at an illegal ball screen.
Different coordinators. Different people coordinating those different regions and leagues. There's just so many different and honestly levels of play too. That's part of the reason the NBA is easier to officiate. You kind of have a bare minimum level of play.
Yeah.
There is a huge variance between like the Horizon League and the Big 12 or the Summit League and the ACC. There is a huge variance there. And those games have to be officiated very differently. It's like the difference between officiating a middle school game and a super high level varsity game.
No, this is coming from a guy that watched parts of West Side's offense function like this. Mm-hmm. But and so I know the advantage it created, right? Especially if you have guards that can read the two-man game pretty well. But defensively, especially when it's out in front with high ball screens, I'd like to see a little more leniency with playing through ball screens
for the defender.
Like, I'm not saying run through a guy, but there's such good shooters now and can shoot from depth. The minute you get those high ball screens, and And I get it. You have to play the game with drop coverage or to hedge or how hard to hedge. You want a soft hedge. Like that's part of the
show versus a hard hedge versus an ice, right? Like there's a lot of different options.
There's some coaches there. They're just going to ice ball screens, right? And sometimes
or do you want to trap off of it? Like there's a million different things you can do.
But I would love for the screener to be able to have a little more freedom to play through screens without everybody like losing their mind.
The defender on the screen.
Yes.
So one of the ways I think you could do that, and Higgy actually brought this up, is what if you just were more strict on the screener themselves? Like, what if you didn't allow them outside their frame?
Do you know how many times you're going to blow the whistle, though?
That's the thing, though. Anytime you're going to change something.
How many high ball screens do you think you see in a given game?
Between both teams, I don't know, 40.
Yeah, I'll probably take the over.
That's fine. Yeah, I mean, I have no frame of reference.
But that's a ton, right? You're gonna slow the game down.
You are, but in order to correct something, there's going to be pain in order to get the correction, right?
Now we'll see if you're right with the NFL and the hip drop.
Yeah,
tackle,
you
right?
have to like either you have the conviction to do it or you don't, and it's gonna be bad for half a season, maybe a full season, maybe 2 seasons. Eventually, though, if you are convicted in how it's going to be called, we saw this in the NBA when they changed the hand check rules. It was brutal for a couple years. And then we have the string of the most skilled basketball we've ever seen in the league. Consistently top to bottom, right? Like the guys that are on we were talking about the Rockets yesterday.
Now listen, the Pacers are 20-3 when they score 130 plus.
Yeah.
23 times
they've scored
hit
130. Yeah. It is, and it's not because nobody plays defense. It's really not. I know that's the easy narrative. Go watch a regular season 80s game. I dare you. Nobody leaves 12 feet away from the hoop. Not a soul. There's a reason. You look back at all these records, the highest scoring games ever, and you're like, oh, it's going to be like 2022. No, it's all in the 1980s with the Nuggets, with Kiki Vandeweghe, scoring 170 points a game because no one played defense outside of 10 feet away from the hoop. Like, yeah, you see the playoffs, and yeah, they're getting after you. You think it's all bad boys, Pistons, and clotheslining people. That's not what it was. You watch regular season basketball in the 80s versus regular season basketball now. The defense is better, but the skill level is so high, they can still put up 130 points a game 23 times in a season.
Crazy.
And they've lost 3 of them.
You see a guy miss open threes, and it's like, whoa.
Yeah, you're like, oh, what's that guy doing? Or you see a guy that can't shoot, and you're like, oh, he's not going to be in the league.
Can't play, yeah.
Like Andre Roberson can't be in the league anymore.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's get out of breath Brian here. He's got some thoughts on the ref. Brian, you got about a minute. What's up?
Hey, fellas, I appreciate you having the official on. Just a couple of things. Ravi, what you're saying just now about officiating it, the screen out, correctly. The official told you he is. He said when the illegal contact happens, they call it.
Yeah.
You gotta understand that's the rule. Otherwise, you want them to call
call the game the way you want it called as opposed to okay, I got you. I got you.
Yeah, he said, but what he's going by what the official just said, he said they'll call it when the contact happens. You had the right idea. Teach your players to go into the leg and get the trip because that is essentially a blocking foul. Okay? So that's how you legislated out the game. Teach your players to take the foul and people stop doing it. But, hey, I appreciate that, Damon. Yep. I agree with you on that over the back. There's no such thing. It's a pushing foul. Heard the rules, fellas.
Appreciate it, Brian.
I used to didn't know the rules when I read, but when I start getting in the rule book, yeah, it does make you mad when you get with other refs. They don't know what they're doing. That answer your question.
Appreciate it, Brian.
And it incites chaos.
Oh, yeah, it does.
In the stands.
People lose their minds. Coming up next, we'll wrap up hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Wrapping up hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube on the Pillar Exterior stage. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. We had a lot going on in college basketball locally, even though, unfortunately, none of the teams, I should say, not neither, there's more than 2. None of the teams are in action any longer. But the transfer portal never sleeps.
Man.
Were you surprised about Josiah Doltzler?
A little. I felt like, man, because I felt like, and this is just my own small-minded brain, I felt like he got off to a better start than people actually gave him credit for. I thought he showed flashes early, and it's like, oh, okay, he can play.
Yeah.
It's not just a Doltzler thing. Like, he's pretty good, and you felt like it was a tough year to work him into the lineup, but to show in whatever it was it 19 games,
17, 19, something. I can check.
I think 19. I was like, that was a little sooner than I thought, but it's never probably enough for somebody that wants to really play unless they saw us.
Yeah, if you're hyper competitive.
Unless he saw the writing on the wall.
So I wonder a couple things about Josiah. First, I wonder about the decision not to redshirt. Because I don't. Yeah, you're right. It was 19 games. I don't. I should have just trusted you.
I wasn't like that. I wasn't gonna stand on that though. It just sounded right.
I think Lawson played in 17 games, and I was confusing the two because Lawson also jumped in the portal yesterday, which I think a lot of people forgot he was on the team, and I don't mean that derisively, but like I legitimately, he was kind of a big deal coming in. He was coming from Memphis. He was a 4-star before going there. Didn't play a ton at Memphis, and then that just never really got going here. But going back to Josiah, I think the red flag for me is when he didn't redshirt. I was expecting him to redshirt this year, give himself a year to kind of develop physically a little bit, give himself a chance to tighten up certain areas of his game that probably needed tightening up before playing at the Big East level. And when that didn't happen, I either thought, okay, the coaching staff doesn't see him. One of two things happened there. Either the coaching staff didn't see him contributing at this level long-term, so they didn't necessarily care to redshirt him, or
you know what? I didn't even think about that.
Or
I didn't even look at that.
They wanted to redshirt him, and he decided not to, and so they weren't on the same page. I think one of those two things happened, and I don't know which one. But I would have a hard time believing that the coaching staff wouldn't at least give it a shot, right? So my inclination is that he chose not to redshirt. And with, you got a point guard coming in, Ty Davis. You don't know what's going to happen in the transfer portal. It seems like Stephen Ashworth is coming back since he didn't go through senior day. I don't know where the minutes come for Josiah Dotzler if he didn't have this development year as a redshirt, And that to me, I mean, it's shocking because of the last name, but if his last name wasn't Dotzler, I don't think anybody's surprised by this.
Yeah. Well, I think that's interesting because I don't think you can have the discussion without
the last name.
I can think
that's part of it.
It's part of it.
It is for sure.
And it's not just because it's a Creighton Dotzler thing. It's because that's where he always wanted to go to school.
Yeah. So I think that's part of it here too is, I mean, if you look at his recruitment in general, Creighton was always a reach, right? It was probably just a little bit outside of what you would have expected his recruitment to look like. And so if it doesn't start looking like it's going to work, maybe you say, hey, this was a reach. I wanted to give it a shot, but I'm going to drop back down to a level that maybe makes more sense for where I'm at right now.
Yeah, I wonder where he will wind up.
I mean, if Omaha liked recruiting the Metro, maybe that's a good spot for him.
Yeah, he's such a high IQ. Now, he's a little older, so I do get that, but I don't think that will scare off.
Well, and he's still got 3 full years.
Yeah.
So, I mean, being older doesn't.
I don't think that will.
If anything, that might be useful.
Yeah, maybe. Like
maturity.
But yeah, his maturation.
Yeah.
But it's just such a weird year, right? You got Kobe Johnson and Omar Rui and Mashburn Jr.
You got
Raymond out of Stanford.
You got a lot of dudes.
Doug Daniels. McDaniels, I mean.
Yeah, from Michigan. Is he allowed to play outside the state of Michigan, or can he only play road games in Michigan now?
Yeah,
is that how it works?
Was somebody ever gonna? Are they ever gonna like explain it? But
does he have to go? Does he have to transfer to another Michigan school?
And my favorite, I've been talking about this guy. I was gonna send this over to Jacob Bigelow. This was probably I don't know. I was listening to him on air, and I was going to send something over to him. We were talking about, I think the conversation was about good freshmen. I was like, one of the best freshmen in the country plays in the Ivy League, and it's Malik Mack.
Oh, yeah.
Remember, leaving Harvard. Malik Mack is a dude.
Yeah, he's really good. Really, really good. And probably, I mean, I think I saw him once this year in terms of a full game.
Yeah.
But, probably not. Hardly anybody's seen him this year because he plays in the Ivy League.
Listen, he's outstanding.
Yeah, really, really good.
Gonna be a good get for somebody.
And, I mean, I'm going to make the assumption here, high IQ player.
Are you sure? Even with a name like Malik, are you sure?
But here's the thing.
Wow.
You can be a high IQ guy and not be a high IQ player. There is a difference.
Yeah. No, I understand.
And you can be and you can be a dummy and be a high IQ player. Look at Draymond.
Yep.
Dummy.
Yeah. I don't see. Listen, he's not. I don't agree.
I don't think he acts like a dummy.
No. Okay. I don't agree, right? Like
he's probably more intellectual than I give him credit for.
He's extremely bright.
Like he's very thoughtful.
He's
lets his emotion get the best of him a lot.
Yeah.
But so that's a bad example. But I think there's a lot of guys that are high IQ players that
now he can do dumb things.
Yes. Yeah. And he does a lot of them, which makes it hard to differentiate
that
between.
He's extremely
like.
bright.
At what point does acting like a dummy make you a dummy?
It depends on what it's offset. I mean, he's rich. He's won a lot of world championships. He's built a couple of businesses.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't either. Right.
You know, see the mental thing, we just never know.
You don't. You can't.
Like I go back to, an RIP with Vontae Davis.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Right. Just yesterday, right?
You have no idea.
35 years old. But do you know what I went back to? I was telling this story yesterday at my house. My very first memory of Davis is when he got cut in Miami. Remember Hard Knocks?
Mm-hmm.
So he gets cut, and there's this long dissertation. Is it Philbin? I can't remember. There's this long dissertation.
I think it was Philbin at the time. I think.
Okay, and I'm probably gonna butcher this, but they're like, oh, he's a little up and down, and they never said what it was. They just talked about like the EKG. It's like, well, sometimes he's here, sometimes he's there. And they talked about like a pass interference or something where he threw a guy to the ground. He goes, it's self-awareness. Like he's just clueless. And in the meantime, there's the voiceover, and then it shows Vontae. He's training at the facility just by himself. He's just like going through drills, kind of warming up, stretching. He's the only one there, but he's in half rack. So I assume practice is going to happen unless he's just staying after, right? And fast forward to they're discussing the trade options, a fifth and a sixth, and then they got down to a second, and so they're like, oh, what do you think we should do? And they're like, oh, we're going to move on. I think we're close to pulling the trigger. I think it was Philbin. I think I can kind of see the face in my head, and he comes in and they're telling him that he's gotten traded. He's going to be traded, and then right dab smack in the middle of them telling him, he goes, I got to call my grandma. And there's this awkward pause, and they're like, "Well, hold on. We'll let you call grandma in a little bit, but we got some business to discuss here."
Yeah,
and it was. I thought, and I'm full disclosure, like real time watching it, I laughed.
Yeah,
like I thought it was funny.
Yeah.
I was like,
that's super odd.
Oh man, he's just like Vernon. Like these guys are weird. But then I remembered. Like their grandma raised them. There's like 5 of the boys. And I think their grandma raised him. So when he called, and he has this look on his face, he's like, it made me chuckle the way he said it. I'm like, shoot, man, that wasn't funny then.
No.
And remember, famously
retired at halftime.
Yeah. And we thought
it was funny then.
We thought it was hilarious.
Yeah.
I remember being on air and I was like,
this dude's out of pocket.
Who quits on their teammates at halftime?
Yeah.
And then we read about yesterday. So I guess I'm very reluctant, I should say, when people do things that we don't
understand
that I give it a name.
That's fair.
You know what I mean?
No, that's fair.
That's just me.
No,
don't let me talk you off of that.
No,
because I'm a nerd. Like I'm not fun. I'm not like
Draymond's maybe a bad example, but
I'm not the fun guy to talk to. About judging people that have done weird things because.
Sure.
No, I'm definitely no saint.
We all know though that there's guys that are whip smart, that are dumb on the field or on the court.
Smart as a whip.
Yeah, whip smart.
I never got that, but
I think it used to be like sharp as a whip or I don't sharp as a tack. I don't know. It's smart guys that are dumb in their sport.
Older person thing, right? You get that? Yeah, because I got that.
I think it's from my mom. Or people that are geniuses on the court that can barely tie their shoes, right? Like we've all seen that, right? It's different forms of intelligence. And I guess that was my only point was, maybe Malik Mack is one of those geniuses that low basketball IQ.
The point, it is loaded for guards though.
Yeah. It's going to be a tough market to move up in if you don't have a track record, which is where we were at with Josiah Dotzler.
Hey, shout out your boy Steve Lutz, too.
Steve Lutz, Oklahoma State. I got to send Lutz a text.
Lots of text.
I gotta send him a text.
Oh yeah, hit him up.
He was always very kind.
Got a little juke
while
joint
we
down
were
here
here.
in Stillwater.
We've got Mike J. Schaefer makes his grand return.
Let's go.
Coming up next.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. Welcome to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Kicking off hour number 3 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're now on KFOR in Lincoln as well. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube from the Pillar Exterior Stage. And it's that time. I got to remind you to go get your prop card selections in online for the Warhorse Casino $100,000 prop card challenge. 25 prop questions. Get 18 or more correct to win cash or free play. You've got until the 5th to make those selections online and to get to the Warhorse Casino in Lincoln to activate your entries. You got questions on how to do that? Go to warhorsecasino.com for a full list of rules and details. That's Warhorse Sportsbook. No bets, no glory.
I'll take it.
We are efforting one Mike J. Schaefer.
The effort has come through.
The effort has come through. The man, the myth, the legend, he is back on the airwaves with us. Schaefer, how are you this morning?
I'm good. I would like to point out the last time I've done radio with Damon Benning, the following hadn't occurred yet. Nebraska volleyball hadn't lost a match. Nebraska basketball hadn't started its season. I'm fairly certain Shelby was pregnant. The football team hadn't had the stretch of wins in October and then the mind-numbing losses in November. His kid hadn't committed yet. That was the last time I had talked with Damon Benning.
And Trev Alberts was still the AD.
Yes, and Trev Alberts was still the athletic director.
Schaefer, you guys are something else, man. So how is it, man? Like, you haven't asked me for any advice, so I assume you're good.
Well, I don't know. I feel like whenever you talk with people about being a first-time parent, I think they've just blacked out everything that they experienced because there's just a lot in there. And I think you remember more of the good than, the sleepless nights, the fact that randomly your shoulder and arm will just start hurting because you've carried the same, 11-pound kid on the same side over and over and over, and you realize maybe you need to start using the other side.
Do you do the X factor like Rule teaches? Do the X factor in the end zone with the kid?
I should, but no. I mean, it's been good. It has been good, but it's definitely I'm probably not. This is going to surprise people, I'm sure. I'm probably not a baby person, as it relates to all things as it goes with an infant. But he's starting to smile. We got a little bit of a personality shining through, so that's nice. He doesn't just sit there and cry, so that's good.
Schaefer, what you described there is actually an evolutionary trait, because otherwise humanity would have ceased to exist because they'd be like, this is terrible. We're not having any more kids.
I feel like some people really like babies. I don't know.
No, not that part. I mean the only remembering the good stuff.
Oh, yeah.
That is definitely like an evolutionary trait, because otherwise
it would just be instant birth control.
Yeah, you would just be like, God, no. Everybody would feel like I feel about children.
So it does make you appreciate your parents more, not in the sense that they took care of you, but in the sense that in my case, I'm the third of three, and they're like, yeah, well, we'll go for another.
We'll run it back.
Yeah. I'm still traumatized, but I was kind of an afterthought when I was born. So I think that would describe a lot of my issues. Schaefer, so like your social media game obviously tapered off, but did your interest in terms of like what you were kind of following or paying attention to?
I have never been less in tune, and there's going to be people that'll mock this because I've never felt that I was in tune, but I've never been less in tune with Nebraska recruiting than these past 7-8 weeks. I mean, basically since signing day, I shut it all down. I mean, the only thing Nebraska-wise I really paid attention to was basketball and obviously when the Trev Alberts stuff came out. Otherwise, I mean, I had
not even baseball.
Baseball to the sense that like I would know that they won each day. I would read the athletic department email that came in, or
not the Sears is like on all of a sudden Blooming's.
Yeah,
like
no, I can't tell you who's on the team at a particularly high level with baseball. This is as checked out as I can get when it comes to Nebraska athletics, and I'm now checking back in, and I've got a lot of work to do to catch back up recruiting wise. But I'll get there. So I apologize. I probably won't be incredibly specific this week if you have questions as it relates to recruiting.
That's, Schaefer, that's okay. We just want to talk to you. We just miss you.
And you maybe have mastered this, Schaefer. Oklahoma Tyler's a lot like this. Guys that aren't openly kind or super nice or go out of their way to just like,
this feels like a backhanded compliments coming.
No, this feels like a front facing compliment. I like this.
but people like want to be around you. Like they kind of grab, like people miss Mike Schaefer, and your MO, at least, especially when you started way back when, was, this guy's never in a good mood. He's,
A little crotchety.
But everybody, I don't know how you guys do it. Like, it's part of your allure. Like, how does that happen?
They're like cats. The people really want them to like them.
See, that's a backhanded compliment. I don't want to be compared to a cat. I want to be the golden retriever that everybody's like, I like this guy. Yeah, that's what I want to be.
Has your cooking game evolved? Like, what's going on with the black?
Like, so here's another thing. I went into parental leave thinking I would accomplish more, and I accomplished absolutely nothing. You can't like cook because, believe it or not, this child does not believe in whatever schedule you want. So as soon as you try to make any food, he could be sleeping peacefully. You could have just gotten him down for 15 minutes. But if he senses that you're about to eat some food and try to watch something, he is going to wake up and scream and yell and need to be held. And then your food is either going to get cold or you have to shove it down your throat so fast you don't even taste it. Yeah. And then you just, at that point, what do I even care what I'm eating? Because I'm not even enjoying it. So no, I have not been able to really kind of cook or do anything. On that. Oh, go ahead.
You know what's funny about that?
What?
I always would joke with people where you learn to eat cold food. If you want to learn to eat cold food, have kids.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, it is.
You don't eat it. You're not going to eat anything hot. And wait till like they'll start eating real food, and then you'll kind of feed, and you'll kind of eat, and then it's like, yeah, it's cold. I'm just gonna. That's where I learned to eat cold eggs. I mean, to be completely honest, but there'll be some good that comes out of. You won't be near as high maintenance with yourself that you thought you were going to be. You'll soften up.
I mean, I've already learned to just walk around in old T-shirts covered in spit up all day. So I mean, I've got that going for me. I wasn't like I never really regarded myself as high maintenance to begin with, but then when you look over and you're like, I wonder if that stain's from today or yesterday. That's when you realize you've maybe hit the lowest point in terms of hygiene.
When exactly?
Since you were,
the beard is fantastic.
The beard's in great shape.
I mean, the beard hasn't been touched. I don't have time to shave. It's time to trim a beard right now.
It looks good.
It does look trimmed up, though. It looks like it's shapely. It's nice.
It's just full. It's full bloom. It's here for spring.
So, Schaefer, Ravi and I have been fighting about this. Actually, not fighting. Been having very in-depth discussions about like quarterback development and what it looks like. And regardless of, let me ask it this way. Depending on who wins the job, does our trust that we have right now in Coach Rule, in your opinion, would it waver?
I guess in part because I think there's the widespread assumption that I share as well that the job has already sort of been decided. I mean, I don't want to, these are tough words for me to say. I don't want to come off like a jerk here, but it's sort of hard for me to sit in this seat and with a straight face say, I think that Heinrich Haarberg or Daniel Kalen can win the job. Mm-hmm. I mean, barring an injury, it's almost impossible for me to imagine UTEP facing anyone other than Dylan Raiola with the first snap next August. So I guess I would certainly be shocked. I don't know that it would cause an erosion in trust. I think I'd be really intrigued. It would come down to more of okay, is there something they can do of Heinrich Haarberg that they couldn't do last year? Because that's who I'm assuming would win the job in this scenario. Mm-hmm. Is there something they've unlocked? Is there some level to this game that they have found? Have they built an offense in such a way that, they can win doing this? I don't think it would be a trust thing. It would be more of a, what am I not seeing? What am I missing? What isn't here? And so I don't know that there's a real trust issue I would have with the quarterback play at this point. Now, if they were doing musical chairs every week, trying to find the hot hand, that I would have a real trust issue, because to me, that isn't coaching. That's just trying to stumble into something and get lucky.
Schaefer, so let's play this scenario out. Let's say Heinrich Haarberg trots out there August 31st. So you're saying, do you think more fans, I'm asking you to climb into the mind of crazy people like me, and try and figure out how fans would feel, do you think they would think more, oh man, what is Rule doing? What is Satterfield doing? What is Glenn Thomas doing? Or more, oh no, what's wrong with Dylan Raiola in terms of not even an injury, but just as a player?
No,
I think your head go first.
I think initially people would be like, there's got to be an injury. There's got to be something they aren't telling us. There's got to, go to immediate conspiracy theory, and then there'd be the, oh no, is he going to enter the transfer portal? Like, I think there'd be a lot of that. It would be a lot of heightened panic. And then obviously the game would start and you'd have to judge off of what Heinrich Harburg is doing in that game. But in the initial moment, I think there would be some real, like, I don't want to say soul searching, but I think there would be some real soul searching about how much energy people have invested in a freshman quarterback that, wouldn't ultimately end up starting, even though that's the belief that, again, what are we, 90? What percentage of people do you think believe Dylan Raiola isn't going to be the starting quarterback?
Isn't?
Yeah, it's got to be less than 5%, right?
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that.
So,
I mean, it's probably less than 1% that genuinely don't think he will be the starter.
So how about this, Schaefer? We were talking about this yesterday. How about I haven't been around him in these situations enough to know, but if it is a young guy like Dylan and you have a veteran, older, experienced linebacking core, guys like Banks and Fedoni who have been around and kind of, Borkature, so a lot of older guys, Ramir Johnson, Gabe Irvin Jr. You see the leadership aspects of leading an older team offensively being a particular kind of burden, or do you think that's just something that naturally evolves as a younger guy that is significantly younger than some of his teammates that he is leading?
I think the nice thing is we have examples of this sort of playing out at Nebraska over the last decade plus, whether it's Taylor Martinez, Tommy Armstrong as redshirt guys, or most recently with Adrian Martinez as a true freshman. I think more often than not, the veterans are going to recognize the talent and what a guy can do for you, and then fill in as necessary. I mean, I think that the leadership required of a quarterback is always going to be there. He needs to have the command of the huddle. He needs to make people feel confident in what they're doing. But that doesn't mean that a guy like Jamal Banks, who already feels like he's become a pretty large leader on this team, just based on the conversation I'm hearing, just away from practice and everything else. I mean, this is a guy that's having people over to his place to just get-togethers and to hang out and to team bonding. I think a guy like that, and especially at a position where Nebraska needs someone to do that, can be really helpful for Dylan Raiola as he gets his feet wet, both in terms of playing and in terms of having to, be a quarterback on a new roster where a lot is expected of you, but you've also never played a snap of college football yet. So I think
of the older guys
makes it easier for him.
IGC and Banks, like you mentioned, and a lot of these guys are in kind of these leadership positions for these teams too. So you can, if you're looking at that as a positive, like a rising tide is going to lift all boats. I mean, maybe you like their leadership, but at some point that transition of, hey, this is moments, right? Hey, this is my offense. Well, can manifest itself more organically.
Yeah, and I think those moments play out on the field, right? Like the first time that he has to lead a critical drive, the first time that they have a 3rd and 8, and he makes a great step up into the pocket and delivers the ball perfectly. Leadership comes in all forms, right? And the guys that can lead vocally, we love in the media because they stand up in front of the podium and they give us the quotes and all of that. But there are a number of guys that you never hear about that lead in the locker room or lead on the field simply because of their play. And if Dylan Raiola can step into critical situations, like let's use a Colorado game, for example, and Nebraska needs a drive late in that game to put them away, whether they're either ahead or to just go up ahead. And he's able to calmly take them down the field and do that and, run the plays and put people in the right positions. That's only going to raise his status in the eyes of everyone else as a leader, even if it's not necessarily the most vocal thing. It's because you're recognizing that talent that's leading you on the field and leading you to success. And so I think that is probably going to get there quicker than maybe any vocal aspect of Dylan Raiola with his teammates.
We're talking with Mike Schaefer from Husker 24/7. Schaefer, so part of the conversation DB and I were having yesterday was about what level of leadership you need at the quarterback spot as it relates to how many wins you end up getting. So I asked him basically, hey, if your goal is 8 or 9 wins, and I know like coaches want to win every game, whatever, but like realistically, you're like, hey, 8 or 9 wins would be a really good year for us. Do you need that really good quarterback leadership to get to 8 or 9 wins, or do you only really need that if you're trying to get over the hump and win a championship?
I definitely think it can help get to the 8 or 9 wins. I think you can get to 8 or 9 wins with suspect quarterback play and a revolving door of quarterbacks and all of that. We've seen teams do it. But I think what you have to get to 8 or 9 wins, and I think we're talking about the same thing, but using different words. I think you got to have trust. And so I think if they have a trust factor in what, whether it's Dylan Raiola or the other two guys, if the trust factor is there when he's on the field, if you trust that he's going to put the team in the right situation and make the right play in the right moment, that's leadership in a lot of ways too. And so I think if that is even at a moderate level, then Nebraska can still be quite successful. The higher that goes, it seems to be, especially with the way that, the game has evolved and the value of the quarterback position, the higher that can get and the more trust that you have in your quarterback, usually the more success on the field that follows.
Schaefer, how come, so we're kind of weird, and we didn't really arrive at a good answer, but the critiquing of the quarterback and who wins the job and who doesn't always seems to be like this grand indictment either way, right? He's not very good, or what's going on. But we don't really, so we're just like we're inserting like wide receivers. Ooh, Banks, he's an older big body, or we wouldn't do that, and we don't say, gosh, what's wrong? What's with the development of like Jalen Lloyd and Doss and Coleman and these guys? Or if Gabe Irvin Jr. wins a running back spot, we don't necessarily look at that as an indictment of Dowdell. We look at how quarterbacks are critiqued and what happens with the depth chart more of as an absolute than we do with almost any other position on the field. Why do you think that's different?
I think because situations like what Kansas has is rare, where it's rare to get a Jaden Daniels and a Jason Bean, and it doesn't really matter. It's not Jaden Daniels. What is his name? Whatever.
Jalen Daniels.
Yeah. And to have, the same team basically come out of it regardless of which one's playing. I think because there's usually a clear delineation between your top guy and your second guy, and you see that play out time and time again. It's hard for us to, I think, whether you're evaluating it critically, whether you're a fan, it's just hard to think that the drop-off won't be somewhat substantial at that position, because it's just ingrained in our brain how valuable that position is. And you just assume more often than not, the coaching staff who has all of this information and watches the practices and the plays and sees what these guys are like behind the scenes is going to correctly assess who can step into those situations and be the guy. And you always want your quarterback to be the guy. Like, nobody is ever asking for their quarterback to just be a game manager unless they realize that the rest of their team is built in such a way and they feel like they're deficient. But in everyone's heart, you want your quarterback to be your best player. And so because of that, the expectation is they need to shine brightly over those behind them. And sometimes to do that, you build it up by tearing the other ones down. It's a weird, it's everything we do with quarterbacks, how we discuss them, how we talk about them is so different than any other position in sport. It's so different than any other position in football. And, it's really hard to separate and to stop doing that.
I just say it's weird, though, and I'm listening, and I kind of alluded to this yesterday, but that gives me more context to say when you have an offensive line that's going to have more starts than any team in their conference combined, it's okay to say your quarterback doesn't have to be great, because I at least I think so, because I'll always take a great offensive line over a great quarterback every day that ends in Y. So maybe we got to do some reshaping.
Yeah. The problem with that is when you get into the fourth quarter situation and you need that big drive, your head is not thinking, well, they've got a good offensive line. It'll be fine here. Your head is thinking, can this guy make that throw? Can this guy get out of pressure? Can this guy put them in positions to make success? When we talk about fourth quarter comebacks, we're not talking about the tight end throwing a hell of a block and then releasing into the flats and getting wide open. We're not talking about the running back picking up the critical blitz. We're always talking about, does the quarterback make the play? Like every single time you get into that crunch time situation, the other 10 guys on the field become nameless and faceless unless they catch the game-winning touchdown. Unless they're Amir Abdullah and on 4th and 11, they get the little outlet and they're able to turn that into a first down against, Northwestern. Like we only want to talk about the other 10 when they score or have the big critical play. But it's not like you go into that moment, you're like, all right, well, the offensive line is good. The receivers are good. They'll be fine. The quarterback just has to do what he does.
So
no, you think that he has to be superhuman.
Can the coach have the conversations, though, where he's talking about surrounding casts and needing to get better across the board? If Nebraska can have elite level special teams and elite level defense, that certainly gives you a lot more leeway for your quarterback to develop. And I think he can say those kinds of things without being disparaging about the quarterback position. What if it's
I think that's all true.
What if it's how we receive the information? We could probably be better in that regard.
Well, yeah, but do you expect us to be better?
Yeah,
Ravi, he looks at me.
I would say that's a nerve for DB. That's a nerve.
Yes.
So Schaefer,
you guys are the same.
No, so Schaefer, let me give context here, right? So we constantly have this battle about DB trying to urge people to be better, which I appreciate, versus me saying the history of how people act is leading me to believe this, right? I would love them to be better, but I don't have a lot of trust when they've been acting like this for however long, right? We were talking about it with the committee when we were arguing about Nebraska's road wins or not. We were talking about it with the committee with
player of the year,
where we would seed. We were talking about voting with player of the year. Like there's
and Brunt's actually doubled down on it too. And he used the term lazy. He's like, well, sometimes voters or people that are actually assessing it they're just lazy. And I'm like, well, because we don't hold anybody accountable. We just say, oh, that's the way they are. So we just go on about our way.
But if I'm predicting something, I have to go based on the history of how people are.
Yeah.
If you watch, you definitely won't parent like that. I guarantee you. No way.
I don't know how I'm going to parent. I just hope to get up every day and survive. Survive and advance. I'm NC State as a parent. That's what I am right now.
That's going to stick.
Get your DJ Burns game right. Schaefer, we appreciate it. Welcome back. Congrats on the child. And it's great to see you.
Oh, bring a smile to my face. Best in the business. Thanks, Schaefer.
See you guys.
That's Mike J. Schaefer, Husker 24/7. New dad, survive and advance. That's what we do. Hot Danger says wanting people to be better and expecting them are two different things. I agree, Hot Danger. More Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back.
Back in the day.
We will be back.
To this day.
We will be back.
Back in the day.
We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We're back here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, KFOR in Lincoln. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. We're live on the Pillar Exterior stage, and it's time to remind you that using your seatbelt saves lives and prevents injuries. Only if it is worn properly, though. Make it click. This message from the NDOT Highway Safety Office. Great stuff there from Schaefer. Lovely to have him back. Really appreciate him joining us this morning.
And he's super pragmatic. So it,
yeah.
But the thing that I like though is he's capable. He has range in that thought process. He usually always lands the plane in its most simplistic form.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever. It's 9 a.m.
But he'll give some thought to
what it looks like outside of that.
Weather patterns.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So
got to see what the jet stream's doing.
I can dig it. Kind of.
You don't agree with him, but you
no, I do. I mean, he's right. He just said on X, he says, one final thought. We, because of the nature of our jobs, get to think a lot about the team makeup, how to assess things, and generally go deep. He said, some only really tune in on Saturdays and just want wins. The quarterback, right or wrong, is often a symbol of that.
But I think that's a fair point.
It's a fair point, and he's right. Like in a vacuum isn't even really Like, yeah, that specific fact is hard to, you can't really pick that apart. But what I'm saying is the thought process on the quarterback and assessing quarterback play is what is capable of changing.
Sure.
Like, don't let people off the hook just because of that. That's fine. They can have that. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't be having these conversations.
We should be having a better conversation about the quarterback.
Yeah, don't dub it down just because you think
not
that's all.
Everybody is.
Yeah, I'm not going backwards in that thought.
Just
right?
because not everybody's having the conversation at that level doesn't mean you should have the conversation at the level they're having it.
Yeah, because you know what?
Ultimately, that can make you dumber.
And you know what ultimately is the thing? It can help us get the quarterback spot right. We keep doing the same thing over and over. And it's not just fans, general managers, people that draft. They think a lot of the similar simplistic thoughts, right? If that is such a hit-miss rate, the most volatile of any position,
you're not doing something right.
We're not thinking about the position correctly.
Yeah, mostly you're getting lucky when you hit on one, right? Especially in the NFL draft.
Like
you're mostly
you understand?
No,
like
100%.
We're just perpetuating the madness if we don't look at how we got here.
Well, it's like the line from Moneyball, where he says, if we play like them out in here, then we're going to lose to them out there, right? You keep thinking about the same things in the same way that have led you to where you are, then why would you expect different results?
Yeah.
Right. And so, and to me, when I think about the quarterback spot in that sense, it's about putting too much on the quarterback's shoulders. What I think about in that sense is, hey, when we talked about this a little bit yesterday,
this was off air, and you made a fantastic point. And it wasn't the Stroud Fields one, because that was good too. You said, well, you can't openly say, hey, I don't need you to be a superstar.
Yeah.
Because deep down, I want you to be a superstar.
100%.
My job is to make sure.
Construct the roster in such a way
Yep.
that we can get to eight or 9 wins with you being just okay.
Yep.
And then.
But you can't tell, you're not.
No, you
that
can't.
Was your thing, right? When I was out. Yeah.
Because if you're trying to develop a quarterback and you put, hey, we just need you to be okay on them, the chances of them ever being more than okay are pretty low.
And I was totally vibing, right? I was down there
that's the same thing.
Burning off energy. But like I was listening. I was like, oh, that's interesting.
It's the same thing when you're teaching kids. It's the same thing in anything. If you put limitations on them of like, hey, just don't be bad, right?
Yeah.
Then they're never going to be good.
And it drives me up the wall. So that's why I said to Mike J, I'm like, there's no way you're going to parent like that.
No.
Like, and I get it, because you're, again,
you coach and teach and parent for best case outcomes, right?
The statement is correct when you say, hey, listen, the best indicator of future performance is typically past behavior.
Yeah.
In the grand scheme of things. But people do get better, and
they can.
And if you just stick to that inherently, like it is what it is, and you leave it there, you want to invest in anybody.
So we're having a conversation about different things, right? So when we're talking about the level of quarterback discussion, that's something that you and I can directly impact at a pretty high level, I think, right? A lot of people listen to the show. I see the download numbers. I see the digital numbers. A lot of people listen to the show. We can impact that directly. I don't think a lot of committee members are listening to the show.
But that's you having a different conversation, because I'm not talking about committee and voters.
Yeah.
I'm talking about redefining expectations of trust when coaches are trying to process through things before we jump off a ledge in either direction.
Either saying Dylan Rail is a bust or that we can't trust Matt Rule.
And you know what? It's just my personality.
And I agree with that,
because
though.
I would say the same thing. And this was a different analogy and a different example. But remember, kind of early on, there was some people that were like, oh, man, he doesn't want Frost to be the head coach. This dude's jealous. It's an LP thing. I'm like, you guys are idiots. Like, I talked to this dude not all the time, but since he's been at UCF, went to his coach's clinic. Like, that's not it. What I'm telling you is there's an irrational sense of this guy is going to be the savior that he is not uniquely equipped to handle, right? Like, there are certain foibles of power, right? That
Some people are built to handle.
I talked about the family dynamics. I talked about the move. I talked about being in the fishbowl. All these things were things that some people were like, "Oh man, he just doesn't want him." No, I don't. That's not what I'm saying. Just like I'm telling you, I don't want Dylan Raiola to not be the quarterback. What I'm trying to do is to have again. How did we get here? What part of that can we, the individual of the information, what part of that can we own? Like that's all. You want emotional growth so you can assess. And I'm not saying you have to be sympathetic or even empathetic if your coaches or somebody else that have gone through kind of what you want this staff to go through as you're watching it unfold. But different perspectives will help you handle and process the information differently so you don't lose your mind. There's no way we should be walking around here saying, like, I heard this all the time. I don't want to be Iowa. I hate Iowa. Like, see, that's irrational, right? Like, that is completely irrational. Why wouldn't you want to win double-digit games? Who cares what it looks like at the time? You can always work on that
later.
But in the meantime, you want to put together W's.
So there's probably a Schadenfreude there with Iowa, because it's Iowa, right? It's not about.
Well, when I first started this, I would say Michigan State.
Right.
I'm like, it's not I'd say we want to be Michigan State.
What the example I would use that I think people have an easier time with, because they obviously just won a national title.
That was 2010 or 9 with Antonio.
Whatever, decade and a half ago.
It was a long time. Yes, I do remember that.
I said, "Oh man, we want."
But look at
Can't
Michigan.
be afraid to say that out loud.
Right? Look at Michigan. They went from winning ugly, right? They were not a ton different from Iowa prior to this last 3-year run. They weren't.
Okay.
A lot of defense, ugly offense, a lot of running, a lot of special teams, right? They were a higher level of it than Iowa in terms of talent.
Yeah, even this year, right? We were guilty of saying,
but
it's not impressive. They haven't played anybody. They're not blowing anybody out. They're just winning 31-3. Remember we would say?
Yeah,
we would say stuff like that
because but that's what I mean though. So the progression of it to, hey, you start off as Iowa or you start off as Michigan 4 years ago, and then you progress into, okay, we upgrade talent a little bit here, we get a better quarterback here. Finally, when you get that guy, it can go from, but you have to lay that foundation. It's what I was talking about. Get to 8 or 9 wins with your roster. Get to 11 or 12 with your quarterback.
Yeah.
Right? Is that too simplistic?
No, because I think they'll tell you that next year will be their best roster that they've had since they've been
100%.
Get
to 8 or 9.
So that's ultimately where you want to go.
Get to 8 or 9 with the roster. Let the quarterback take you over the top. But if you rely on your quarterback, again, it's the Caleb Williams thing. If you rely on your quarterback to get you to 8 or 9, you're long term, you're in bad shape. And you're putting, because it's what we did with Adrian Martinez. We were trying to get Adrian Martinez to get us to 8 or 9.
Yeah.
And if there's anything wrong there,
but we've been like that.
100%. It was like that with Taylor.
Yeah.
It was like that with Tommy.
Yeah.
It was like that with Adrian.
Yeah. Just like
the only team that was different was when you had that otherworldly defense in 2009. That's it. That's the only time it's been different.
You think we would take that off? We would exchange that offense for those results?
Absolutely.
100%.
For an appearance in a conference title game?
100%.
For a chance with 1 second left to win or lose a game, to win a conference title for the first time in 25 years?
I go back to the very original question for the last 2 months.
Yeah.
Do you really trust, or do you trust to get confirmation of what you think?
Unconditional trust is a hard sell. It really is, especially when you've been burned for 20 years. John Fanta coming up next.
We will be back.
.9 to go. Tigers inbound.
Redemption tour is the final
back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
1.9 to go. Tigers inbounded. Clock hits 0. And let's get out of here and go to the Final Four.
Lawyer the rebound. 5 seconds left. Lawyer will dribble it out. And the next stop on the Purdue Redemption Tour is the Final Four.
Wrapping up the show here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're also on KFOR in Lincoln. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla, live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube on the Pillar Exterior stage. And we're joined now by John Fanta from College Basketball on Fox. He's the host of Big E Shootaround, as well as a contributor to Field of 68. You got more titles than we've got sponsors. John, what's going on, man?
Guys, good morning. It's great to be with you.
That latest endeavor of Field 68 is pretty sweet, though. Yeah, you got big personalities and a ton of, like, you guys can get the meat off the bone too. I kind of like that.
You know what? We try to solve the world's problems, guys.
I don't know how you deal with those yahoos, John. That's all I'm saying.
I got to tell you, as I come on with you this morning, I just think as we head into this weekend, I don't know. I come onto this show totally blind on what you guys have been talking about this morning, and maybe you hit on this, but I think we are in for a fun men's Final Four. I'll be candid as somebody who covers the sport year round. I really hope we get UConn Purdue, because I do think that the semifinals, either we're going to see an all-time type of upset, but I don't know if that's great for the championship game, if I'm being completely honest. But if we get UConn and Purdue, that becomes then the Edey versus Klingon storyline. Meanwhile, within this sport, on the women's side, I don't know about you guys, but I watched that whole night last night, and I do call a good amount of women's hoops for Fox. Right now, that product is unbelievable.
Yeah.
How good it is. Like I don't remember the last time I woke up the morning after like a basketball game, and I'm still thinking about the way it was played, not the result.
Mm-hmm.
The way that game's being played right now. I just think we're in for an all-time Final Four on that side. Like that Friday night Beckers-Clark matchup is going to be unreal. We'll remember where we were when we saw that game.
And the sneaky good matchup, and we didn't get to see her a ton, but we follow the Big Ten here with Stolke and her being in foul trouble. Can her play in the post offset what UConn likes to do with tempo and rim running? Because Iowa likes to get up and down the court too. That's going to be sensational to see who gets more points in the paint on Friday night. We'll talk a lot about the backcourts, but points in the paint and easy points with 2-point layups is going to be something I'm definitely paying attention to in that one.
I think so too, and I think to your point, Damon, it's Aaliyah Edwards on the other side is such a presence and such a physical force for Connecticut in how she plays the game. Foul trouble is going to be important too.
Yeah,
because UConn's not particularly deep at all, which is why what Gino Auriemma has done this year is one of his all-time best coaching jobs. He lost 5 players to season-ending injuries. 5. And he's 29-2 since December the 6th.
Yeah. I mean, do you see their bench? It looks like a football team.
I know. But I just, guys, like real talk here, and you guys, you two guys are gonna, we're all males here, okay? To the males who are on X right now, and social media platforms, who are trying to cloud over the fact that the women's game is in a generational season, go touch some grass.
Nice one. So let me ask you this about on the men's side, though, because I think not everybody, I mean, there's representative fan bases of the 2 other teams, but is there anything stylistically between NC State and Bama that you think is interesting for their opponents in this one, where you're like, okay, I could rationalize that in my head? Because the point spread would say no.
I know.
In Vegas. But that there is a reason you play the game.
Absolutely. There is a reason. I think NC State's interesting in that they have this big man in DJ Burns who has just caused havoc for every opposing big that he's had to gone up against. And now you have to face Mount Vesuvius. You got to face the best of the best. You got to face the absolute king in Zach Edey. And how do those styles contrast? But I think additionally, it's DJ Horn, Casey Morsell, and company. How do they guard? How do they guard Purdue's perimeter? That's where I rationalize it a little bit, because you don't just hold Marquette to 4 for 31 from 3. You hold Tyrese Proctor without a made field goal. You kept Kyle Filipowski in check. You did enough on Jeremy Roach as well. Like, NC State's defense has not gotten enough credit for how they've limited opposing backcourts, for how they've taken away three-point shooting at crucial times. And I've thought about this with NC State. I've seen a lot of people the last week say, wow, there are some teams in this tournament that are getting open looks but are missing them. Just because you're getting an open look doesn't mean you're poorly defended.
There's reason you're open, right? I was gonna say.
One, you're left open for a reason sometimes, but 2, something I could relate to. 2, you have to work sometimes really hard to get open.
Yeah.
And that's something that I think we sometimes undervalue, that you might have a catch and shoot. Look, how much work did you have to do leg-wise to get to that spot and finally make the shot? That's the difference. And that NC State's making the opposing teams work. As for Alabama, highly entertaining style, great tempo. Mark Sears having an unbelievable year. What Nate Oates has done is superb. Like a massive hat tip to the Crimson Tide. They lost several key rotation players. They lost the number 1 pick to the draft, and here they are standing in the Final Four. He lost 3 assistant coaches, and here he is standing in the Final Four. Unbelievable job. Mm-hmm. That being said, I want to rationalize it as a sports fan. I want to say I could see Alabama beating UConn for the sake of the drama. Guys, I just can't see it.
So, John, let's assume that Vegas is right, that our thoughts are right, and we end up with UConn and Purdue. Where do you start looking at? Obviously, the big matchup is, Kong versus Godzilla here, Edie versus Klingon, right?
Well, they're teammates now.
I haven't seen that one yet. So obviously that's the headline that's going to get all the attention. But where do you look at in that potential matchup that kind of gets your ears perked up a little bit, that you find really interesting?
Donovan Klingon getting hit with 2 early fouls and Dan Hurley going berserk.
Yeah. That's actually
not out of the question.
That could easily happen, John.
That could easily happen. And if it does happen, it becomes a game. If it does happen, it becomes a game. And it becomes a chess match. If it does not happen, and Klingon avoids the foul trouble, and he and Edie are both doing their things, it ain't going to be a good night for Purdue. It ain't going to be a good night for Purdue because UConn's just so much more complete, so much more well-rounded. I think we always, the two of you are great at doing this. We have to tell the truth. All right? UConn is winning their NCAA tournament games by an average of 28 points per game. Okay? They just beat Illinois by 25 on a night where their All-American point guard did not make a shot. And their one-and-done NBA draft pick only made 1 shot. I think what we've got right now is, and look, I'm going to go out to Arizona and be on Field of 68 shows all week, and we'll talk about keys for the teams. This is just me, and maybe I'll come on your show. I'll apologize to the viewer base if I'm wrong. I think right now we got a lot of willing into existence versus what the truth is. And the truth right now is that nobody's been able to even touch UConn.
I got it. So, John,
except Creighton,
let's say, if it again operating that it's Purdue and UConn, how much effectiveness do the lawyers, the Gills, how much impact do they have to have in order to offset the Braden Smith, guys like that, to offset what Edie's capable of doing? Because there are times when they're making shots, they look almost just as unguardable.
They do. The key thing with that is that their shot making can come and go at times.
We saw it. We saw it this weekend.
Right. We saw it this weekend. Now they still won.
Yeah.
Now they beat a team in Tennessee who has offensive droughts themselves. And they beat a team in Gonzaga who never had a defensive formula for Klingon. I mean, Mark Few got 2 cracks at it, and it just didn't. It wasn't him.
I'm still miffed that Ziegler played like that on the big stage in that game.
Yeah. Tennessee, a part of me feels for Rick Barnes that he had to run into this monster to keep him from what would have been his second Final Four.
So is Purdue as a team, obviously, they've got to go as far as their backcourt can take them. You see with UConn and their ability to smother you on the perimeter, how underappreciated is that wing defense? They make it miserable.
Yeah, they're elite. I mean, the way that they guard, the way that Cam Spencer and Stefan Castle compete, it's really special. They're going to try to lock down Braden Smith and Fletcher Loyer. That's why, to your point, what Purdue needs, they need Trey Kaufman-Renn, they need Lance Jones, they need Mason Gillis to knock down shots. You've got to rely on your depth. You've got to get Klingon in foul trouble, and you have to then feed Zach Edey against Samson Johnson and totally dominate that matchup. And then defensively, if you're Purdue, if that happens Monday night, if that matchup happens, you have to take away UConn's threes. Now, teams have done it. I think the scariest thing is Illinois held UConn 3 of 17 from 3, and UConn still won by 25. So, guys, I can talk until the sun comes down to the formula, but you know what you got to do? More than anything, you got to rebound. If you do not rebound, you're going to lose to Connecticut. They're top 5 in the country in rebound margin. You can't get dominated on the glass.
John Fanta, you're the best in the biz. We appreciate it, buddy.
Thanks, John.
Appreciate you guys. Thanks so much.
More Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up tomorrow here on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, KFOR in Lincoln.